Chapter 2646. Zhong Lixiao's pupils constricted. This kind of martial will made everyone frown. Lin Sun was clearly suppressed by the talisman tribulation lightning, but he could still use this kind of method to fight. It was truly unimaginable. In the end, he hasn't passed the tribulation yet. Otherwise, he wouldn't just be using his martial will. This is the best opportunity to kill him. Qi Lingyun's voice was cold. Kill! When they heard this, all the heroes stood up and attacked together. Naturally, there were some among them who wanted to kill Lin Sun and seize his good fortune. But most of them wanted the primordial Tao tree. This was a supreme treasure of an era. Who wouldn't covet it? Taking advantage of this chaotic situation, as long as they could get close, even if they didn't want to take the whole tree, just breaking a branch would be enough. This was the true immortal Tao root. It carried the origin power of the immortal Tao. Its value was immeasurable, enough to make immortals go crazy. Otherwise, nobles like Zhong Lixiao and the others from the eighth heaven wouldn't be so impulsive. Condense. Someone chanted an obscure Tao scripture. Terrifying divine flames circulated around his body. His eyes were cold as he charged forward crazily. There was only one primordial Tao tree. Even if it was broken, there wouldn't be enough for everyone. Go! A dull explosion, as deafening as thunder, was heard. A monarch ancestor wielding a giant sword enshrouded in dense laws of lightning also charged toward the Hongmeng tree. But what was faster than them was a golden bolt of lightning. It was unbelievably fast. Upon closer inspection, it was a golden sparrow. Its entire body seemed to be made of immortal gold, dazzling and dazzling. It spread its wings and soared into the sky, faster than everyone. It clearly controlled the extremely heaven-defying space laws. Similarly, it was the first existence to approach the primordial Tao tree. It stretched out a pair of giant golden claws, and was about to pull the tree away. Boom! A powerful battle chi soared into the sky, turning into a golden river that violently knocked it away. This was the power of Lin Sun's martial will. Not only that, all the power that rushed towards the primordial Tao tree was blocked, turning into a rain of light. Everyone was terrified. One had to know that there were hundreds of people attacking at this moment, and every one of them was an overlord in the Emperor realm. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to kill their way to the ascendant stage. But now, they couldn't even break through the obstruction of a martial will. Screech! The golden sparrow let out a sharp cry, seeming to be unwilling. He didn't retreat but advanced instead. His resplendent golden wings tore apart the sky as he dove down. He opened his mouth and charged towards the grand mist tree once more as if he wanted to swallow the tree into his body. The golden bird beak was even sharper than a heavenly blade. It tore through the sky, and when it opened, it seemed to be able to swallow all things. However, a terrifying change was taking place. The golden sparrow, whose golden wings covered the sky and pressed down on the heavens, was suddenly grabbed by the power of that martial will. It let out a long, angry cry, but it couldn't break free. Instead, it was crushed by Lin Sun's martial will. Bang! The golden rain of light mixed with blood splashed high into the air. This golden sparrow was an anomaly in the ultimate Emperor realm. It was even more terrifying than those in the same realm. But he still couldn't resist Lin Sun's divine power, and both his body and soul were destroyed. Open! A loud shout that was as heavy as iron rang out. Lin Feng, who had always been a man of few words, made his move. He held a simple and unadorned saber in his hand. He took a step forward and slashed out with the saber that he had been preparing for a long time. Whoosh! A peerless black saber aura flashed. Lin Sun's martial will that was obstructing the primordial tree was instantly slashed into two, and it was completely crushed by the black saber aura that swept out with a rumble. The power of a single saber strike was shocking. Everyone was shocked by this saber strike at first, and then they couldn't help but reveal excited expressions. How could Lin Sun, whose martial will had been severed and who was trapped by the decree's tribulation lightning, protect the primordial Tao tree. Kill! Attack! A wave of shouts resounded in the battlefield. Zhong Lixiao, Qi Pejuan, and the others charged towards the primordial Tao tree at practically the first moment. Lin Feng, who'd severed Lin Sun's martial will with a single saber strike, was undoubtedly the fastest person. His figure practically didn't stop before he arrived before the primordial tree. However, he was just about to make a move when he realized something, and his figure suddenly retreated explosively. Subsequently, the expressions of Zhong Lixiao, Qi Pejuan, and the others changed abruptly, and they dodged without the slightest hesitation. Before the others could react, a strand of sword aura shot through the sky like a divine rainbow, and it swept over from nearby. Pooh! 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 Over 10 cultivators that charged at the front were like crops in a field before this sword strike, and they were slashed horizontally. Their bodies split apart while their soul cores shattered into pieces, causing blood to spray like a waterfall. The defensive strength and treasures they possessed, and the defenses they possessed before their deaths were completely like paper, and were utterly unable to resist this attack. On the other hand, the people behind them were lucky enough to survive, and they broke out in cold sweat from shock. They simply seemed as if they'd taken a trip to the gates of hell. That sword aura was too terrifying, and it was all-powerful. Right at this moment, everyone noticed that it was surprisingly Lin Sun who'd executed this sword strike. The tribulation lightning that covered his body had vanished a long time ago, and it revealed his tall and slender figure. Moreover, his formidable aura covered the heavens and the earth, and it pressed down upon the surroundings. He succeeded in overcoming the tribulation? The hearts of everyone sank, and they were surprised and bewildered. The might of the tribulation lightning had actually been dispersed, and this was inconceivable. Are all of you done playing around? Lin Sun's black pupils were like bolts of lightning as he swept the surroundings with his gaze. His voice wasn't loud, yet it seemed to carry an invisible and terrifying dignified aura, and it caused the hearts of everyone to tremble. Everyone retreated, their expressions uncertain. Before, Lin Sun killed Mu Yi, a great ancestor of the Jewing Emperor, and crushed Golden Sparrow with only his martial will. How terrifying would Lin Sun be now? We have no ill intentions towards you. We are only after the opportunity of the primordial myriad Tao tree. The person at the front braced himself and said. Lin Sun ignored him and stared at Qi Lingyun, Zhong Lixiao, and Qi Pejuan, who were also at the forefront. His eyes swept over these old enemies one by one, and his killing intent was undisguised. At this moment, he'd already successfully overcome the tribulation and stepped into the extermination ancestor realm, causing his cultivation to undergo a tremendous change. Different from ordinary Ninth Realm ancestors, during the period of enlightenment in front of the Hong Meng tree, Lin Sun had integrated the immortal Tao, the netherworld Tao, and his own Tao of the last era into one and achieved the extreme breakthrough. Because of this, he was able to immediately master a complete progenitor Great Tao, and not just one. He could not be called the Zhu Shui Great Progenitor. He should be called the Apex Myriad Tao Ancestor. This was fundamentally different from other Emperor ancestors. Ordinary Emperor ancestors could only condense a complete progenitor Great Tao even if they mastered many Great Taos. This Great Tao could accommodate other Great Taos, but other Great Taos were unable to replace this progenitor Great Tao. But for Lin Sun, any Great Tao could be condensed into the profundities of the progenitor realm, and he could display the supreme and extreme might of this realm. This was the difference. Moreover, Lin Sun was an apex myriad Tao ancestor, so he was completely different from the Zhu Shui Great Progenitor. Lin Sun, bow down and I'll spare your life. Some people were murderous, but they were actually just putting on a brave front. Their bodies were almost frozen when they were stared at by Lin Sun. Even though you've overcome the tribulation successfully, you're at your weakest now. Aren't you afraid of dying by fighting so many of us by yourself? Others shouted loudly and encouraged the others to attack together. As for Qi Lingyun and the others, they were using secret techniques to spy on Lin Sun and try to see through his secret. They wanted to find out more about him. Because at this moment, Lin Sun didn't reveal a trace of weakness at all, and it seemed as if the unparalleled great tribulation from before hadn't injured him at all. Let's see if I dare. Meanwhile, Lin Sun spoke. He vanished on the spot and transformed into an expanse of monstrous divine radiance that charged forward. Perhaps it could be called a gale because it was too domineering. It swept through the heavens and the earth like a violent gale. Numerous treasures and techniques rumbled as they exploded into pieces, and they were utterly unable to obstruct Lin Sun at all. All the people in front of him were blasted flying while bleeding from all 7 apertures. All of them were horrified, and their expressions changed while their scalps went numb. This sort of might shook the hearts of all. No. Someone cried out loudly and tried to dodge. However, chaotic qi surged over while a large hand pressed down upon the world and crushed all things into pieces. This person was exactly that fellow that was shouting arrogantly earlier. At this moment, he was directly blasted apart in midair. Moreover, this was merely the beginning. As Lin Sun attacked, his tall figure was like a celestial emperor that swept through the battlefield. Every single move he made emanated monstrous might, and the universe and the scriptures of the world seemed to resonate with it. Rumble! Divine light shot out and surged towards the surroundings. Numerous imperial weapons and techniques were circulated to their limits by those cultivators, and they could easily obliterate the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers. However, they were like illusionary bubbles that rumbled and exploded into pieces before Lin Sun. All techniques and imperial weapons were swept away like a whirlwind, and they were easily destroyed. It was like he'd entered an unstoppable state. In merely the blink of an eye, over 10 cultivators were crushed on the spot. Some were blasted into pieces by the force of his fist, some were slapped apart by the winds of his palm, some were slashed apart by sword qi, some were incinerated by the monstrous glow of the Tao. It was swift, violent, and overbearing like a hot knife through butter. Lin Sun's seemingly invincible and murderous state caused the surroundings to be thrown into great chaos. Countless astounded voices resounded while the hearts of everyone trembled with fear. Lin Sun, who wasn't suppressed by the tribulation lightning, was simply like a peerless emperor, and he possessed a great imposing aura capable of devouring the world and sweeping through the universe. Clang! A spear that seemed as if it was made from black gold rumbled as it whistled out from Zhongli Zhao's hand, and it tore through space as it pierced towards Lin Sun at an unbelievable speed. Clang! The black spear was clamped between 2 of Lin Sun's fingers, and it was unable to move at all. Everyone, he's invincible. Quickly attack together and kill him. Zhongli Zhao's expression turned grim, and it was filled with shock and rage. He was an imperial ancestor, yet his full-force strike had actually been blocked by Lin Sun's fingers. He almost didn't dare believe his eyes. Pooh! Lin Sun's response was a blunt punch from Lin Sun. After this strike, Zhongli Zhao spat a large mouthful of blood and was blasted flying. Moreover, his body was shaken to the point it cracked apart and bled. This is impossible! Zhongli Zhao cried out loudly as he was unable to accept this. They were both imperial ancestors, yet Lin Sun who just advanced possessed a crushing strength that easily defeated him who'd attained the peak of the martial ancestor realm for countless years. This seemed to be too inconceivable. At this moment, Qi Lingyun, Qi Pejuan, Lin Feng, and the others revealed solemn expressions while their hearts trembled slightly. At this moment, Lin Sun was formidable to an unprecedented extent. He was unfathomable and unfathomable. P.S. There's something wrong with the goldfish's body, so there's no need to wait for me to update it. Chapter 2647. The entire battlefield was silent. Everyone was shocked. Lin Sun, who had broken free from the calamity, seemed to have become a completely different person. The power he wielded was so terrifying that they couldn't see through him at all. Wasn't Mu-Yi powerful? The Ju-ing great ancestor from the 8th heaven could be said to be invincible, except for those in the same realm. But he was killed by Lin Sun's martial will. But now, as Lin Sun broke free from the calamity, he displayed his own power. He killed emperors like slaughtering chickens, and great ancestors like cutting grass. Even someone as powerful as Zhongli Xiao was easily defeated in a head-on battle. All of this shocked and terrified everyone. Their expressions kept changing, and their hearts were terrified to the extreme. How can he be so powerful? He passed an unprecedented calamity and established a way to suppress the past and the present? Qi Lingyun's pupils shrank. She had once forced Lin Sun to bow his head, and then she wanted to kill him. Now, seeing Lin Sun's combat power, besides boiling killing intent, there was a chill in her. Rumor has it that only the descendants of the eternal gods can touch the threshold of invincibility in the Ju-ing great ancestor realm. Lin Sun, could he have also touched this realm? Qi Pejuan frowned, and a layer of terrifying killing intent appeared on his body. He felt great pressure and threat. Lin Sun is not a descendant of the eternal gods. I don't believe that there is really an invincible person in this realm in this world, Lin Feng said expressionlessly. Lin Sun was too powerful. He deeply threatened everyone's confidence, giving them a bad premonition. Even their fighting spirit was shaken. With a boom, the immortal palace shook and the light of the way spread. Lin Sun was like an immortal looking down on everyone. As he stepped forward, the world trembled. The entire void seemed to be unable to contain his true body. Incomparably bright light of the way swept out from his body. Puff! The people at the front were directly shattered by the terrifying fighting power. Blood splattered everywhere, bones were broken, and tendons were torn. Their bodies exploded. There were hundreds of cultivators in the immortal palace, and all of them were overlords on the Emperor's path. But now, dozens of them were killed by Lin Sun in the blink of an eye. From beginning to end, no one could withstand his sharpness. This scene was extremely terrifying. Lin Sun was invincible and unstoppable. This was a type of invincible might. What are you all waiting for? Waiting to die? Let's kill him together. Otherwise, we'll all die. Someone roared. Puff. However, this person's words came to an abrupt halt, and his body split into two. A ray of sword chi cut out from Lin Sun's fingertips, like a divine rainbow running through the sky and the earth, and killed the man on the spot. Many people felt a chill from head to toe. At this moment, Lin Sun was not only heaven-defying in cultivation, but also the Taoism he displayed was incomparably terrifying. Every move he made had the power of the Emperor's road. They weren't mistaken. While comprehending the Tao before the primordial Tao tree this time, Lin Sun hadn't just refined his grand Tao and undergone an extreme transformation. He'd even completely fused the various imperial scriptures he possessed with the origin scripture of the last era. Now, as soon as he utilized the grand Tao furnace scripture, every single move he made was capable of resonating with all scriptures, and it produced a supreme battle force that reigned above all techniques in the world and conformed perfectly with him. Because this was his own Tao and Dharma. Just like this, although it was just a casual attack, the terrifying power shook the sun and moon. A vast pressure descended, and violent rumbling sounds came from his body. The light of the Tao burst forth, and the divine radiance spread in all directions. It was truly terrifying. Many cultivators who were close couldn't even withstand this pressure. Lines of blood appeared on their bodies, and they were almost shattered. Among the people present, only the peerless figures above the Emperor Ancestor realm were slightly better. But their expressions also changed drastically. Although they were also Zhu Shui's Emperor Ancestor, they were the top existences on the Emperor's road in the 8th heaven, enough to deter those in the same realm and stand proudly at the peak of the Emperor's road. But Lin Sun, who was in front of them, actually possessed a foundation and power that was sufficient to surpass them after transcending the tribulation. How could they not be shocked? Kill! I don't believe that he's really invincible. Chi Pajuan roared and suddenly turned into a silver rainbow. With a violent roar, he rushed towards Lin Sun. In his hand there was a green Taoist seal that emitted boundless light. At the same time, dozens of cultivators also came to their senses, and one after another, they attacked with their magic treasures. Boom! A huge hole seemed to be poked in the heaven and earth. The turbulent energy surged like a boiling river and turned into a colorful torrent of power, rushing towards Lin Sun. The other Zhu Shui's emperor ancestors, such as Zhongli Xiao and Lin Feng, also attacked at the same time. They released their combat power to the extreme and launched all kinds of magic skills at Lin Sun. Lin Sun's eyes were emotionless. He just gently raised his palm and pressed down with one hand. Bang! Chi Pajuan, who was flying towards Lin Sun, was easily swatted away by Lin Sun's palm like a fly. Then, he waved his sleeves. Streams of mighty sword chi as thick as mountains swept out. Bang! 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 17 or 18 cultivators' defense power was broken by the unparalleled torrent of sword chi. Their bodies and souls were torn apart, and their chi and blood were boiling. They were almost blown up on the spot, and those below the Emperor Ancestor realm were even more miserable. Their power, in front of Lin Sun at this time, was like glass in front of a divine hammer. It easily smashed the glass. Along with the rumbling sound of the sword chi spreading out, many people were killed on the spot, whereas the others were terrified. All of them controlled streaks of light and executed all the divine abilities they possessed to flee desperately in all directions. In the blink of an eye, there were only about 30 people left in the central immortal court. The other cultivators didn't dare to think about following Qi Lingyun to the 8th heaven for cultivation. They were already scared out of their wits by Lin Sun. Lin Sun didn't stop them. In fact, even if he wanted to, he couldn't stop them. There were too many people. Hundreds of Emperor Realm cultivators were not ordinary experts. If they were determined to escape, Lin Sun could only kill a few of them even if he used all his strength. What's more, he didn't care about these insignificant people from the beginning to the end. His chi had been firmly locked on Qi Lingyun, Zhongli Xiao and the others. They were his targets, and he had already launched an attack. His target was Qi Lingyun. Qi Lingyun's eyes narrowed slightly, but her expression was still calm. She didn't fight head-on, but kept far away. Kill! On the other side, Lin Feng rushed over first. The black saber in his hand tore through the void, stirring up a universe and stars. It was boundlessly terrifying. "You're courting death," Lin Sun shouted. His voice shook the sun, moon, and rivers. Chaotic chi filled the air. He took a step forward and punched. He was like a celestial emperor descending to the mortal world, looking down on all living beings. Boom! Lin Feng flew out, blood spurting out of his mouth. There were many terrible wounds on his body. He chose to fight head-on, refusing to yield to reality. But the result was cruel. He was no match for Lin Sun. Back in the Great Void Immortal Realm, he fought head-on with Lin Sun to save Shui Zhongjing. At that time, Lin Sun was only an 8th grade emperor, but he was able to block his attack. But now, as Lin Sun broke through, he was injured in a head-on collision. This result made Lin Feng's expression change. But he was also terrifying. He had a firm and fearless fighting intent. He jumped forward and fought Lin Sun with his life. Clang! After a dozen rounds, Lin Sun pushed out his palm and sent Lin Feng's black saber flying. Lin Feng didn't dodge and directly blocked it with his fist. But the next moment, Lin Feng's fingers started to break inch by inch. Then his arms exploded, and his body shook violently. He was smashed into pieces in the void, blood splashing everywhere. Lin Feng groaned in pain. His eyes were bloodshot. He had nowhere to run and his spirit was about to be completely obliterated by Lin Sun. Clang! All of a sudden, a strange, shrill scream rang out. Lin Sun's figure suddenly stopped. The abyssal sword cauldron roared out, glowing with billions of rays of Taoist light, covering his whole body. An ear-splitting sound of collision resounded out as a flying shuttle that was branded with an eternal aura fiercely collided with the abyssal sword cauldron like a black bolt of lightning, and the energy that erupted from it was so terrifying that it caused the abyssal sword cauldron to suffer the impact and shake violently. Lin Sun's figure also shook, but he was not injured. How can he block it? Qi Lingyun was shocked. The flying shuttle was one of her trump cards. It was branded with the immortal aura. Let alone the Emperor Ancestor, even the Emperor Ancestor Juetian would not be able to block it if he was caught off guard. But now it was blocked by Lin Sun's sword cauldron. But this attack had also helped Lin Feng resolve a fatal crisis and saved his life. His blood qi surged and his shattered body recovered. However, his face was unprecedentedly solemn. Bang! The flying shuttle exploded, and this trump card was destroyed. After Lin Sun took out the abyssal sword cauldron, his aura skyrocketed again. He suddenly sprinted, broke through the layers of encirclement, and suddenly arrived in front of Zhong Lixiao. Buddha Demon Realm. An ancient black-colored scroll surged into appearance in front of Zhong Lixiao. He opened it and shook it, causing countless worlds to appear before him. They were like numerous worlds that were like purgatory, and every single one of these worlds was covered in barriers that formed a terrifying defensive system that overlapped with each other. He was clearly in front of him, but it felt as if he was thousands of worlds away. There was no doubt that this black scroll was an incredible treasure. Phew! Zhong Lixiao, who had just revealed his strongest defense, had just heaved a sigh of relief when he suddenly raised his head and saw the entire Buddha demon realm suddenly stiffen. Then, an unimaginably sharp and dazzling Taoist sword flashed out from Lin Sun's abyssal sword cauldron, and it fiercely pierced into the layered world barrier, as if it was invincible. Everywhere it passed, it seemed as if one world after another was disrupted and crushed, and a terrifying torrent of black light burst out. Zhong Lixiao's soul almost came out of his body. This was his trump card of defense, but now Lin Sun's sword had pierced through the endless barriers and destroyed countless worlds. In the void, a ray of dazzling light pierced through the sky. Zhong Lixiao could even see the indifference on Lin Sun's face, but it was too late to dodge. Puff! The Taoist sword struck and deeply pierced through him. Zhong Lixiao and his soul were completely minced into pieces by Lin Sun's sword, and he didn't even have the time to use the many life-saving means in his body before he was completely annihilated by the terrifying sword intent on Lin Sun's Taoist sword. He had truly perished, and his soul had dissipated. P.S. It's hard for me to write because I'm sick. I'm a little late. Please forgive me. Chapter 2648. Zhong Lixiao was dead. Moreover, he was stabbed by Lin Sun's Taoist sword when he had all kinds of life-saving trump cards with him. He didn't even have time to use his trump card. Most of the life-saving trump cards carried by Emperor Ancestor Zhongli were branded with the power of immortality, or some kind of powerful aura of order, and possessed all kinds of incredible magic. But he was not invincible. The abyssal sword cauldron in Lin Sun's hand, after years of tempering and transformation, was not afraid of the impact of these trump cards. It could be said to be indestructible. It should be known that the abyssal sword cauldron had refined countless immortal substances, and it had been nurtured by all kinds of order forces over the years. It had already become incredible. Although its power could not be compared with that of an immortal Taoist weapon, it was no longer comparable to an ordinary emperor weapon. He did not want to show it before because he was afraid that these enemies would escape. But now it was time to show the dagger, and Lin Sun would not hide it anymore. Swish! Lin Sun operated the abyssal sword cauldron, and the rumbling sound seemed to collapse the sky. 3 or 4 cultivators did not even have time to react. Their bodies exploded in the air, and their bodies and souls were destroyed. That power was too terrifying. Before using the abyssal sword cauldron, Lin Sun was already invincible, and no one could stop him in the battlefield. As he operated the abyssal sword cauldron, his power soared a lot. The remaining cultivators' fighting spirit completely collapsed, and they fled in panic, not daring to hesitate or stay any longer. Although Lin Sun was alone, he looked down on the battlefield with an invincible momentum. This was a kind of great momentum that really dominated the world. Even the experts of the 4 East Royal clans, such as Gu Banzwang and Yun Luohong, had suffered heavy casualties in the previous battle. Only Gu Banzwang, Yun Luohong and a few others took advantage of the chaos to escape. Soon, only Qi Lingyun, Qi Pejuan, Lin Feng and a few others were left. We can't hesitate anymore. If we don't use our trump cards, we will all lose. Qi Lingyun's voice was cold, and she seemed extremely calm. Indeed, at this moment, Lin Sun was almost invincible, but the reason why they did not retreat was that they were unwilling to give up, and they had something to rely on. Boom! The void trembled violently as Lin Feng took action. He raised his hand and a huge Dao imprint flew out. Its entire body was simple and unadorned, as if it was forged from black gold. The words overturning the heavens were engraved at the bottom, and they shone brilliantly. As soon as it flashed out, the sky-piercing seal transformed into the size of a mountain and pressed down towards Chen Shi. The central immortal court trembled, collapsing with a rumble. If not for the obscure law power protecting this place would have definitely sunk. Clang! Lin Sun attacked like a celestial emperor, resisting with the abyssal sword cauldron. The two burst out with the most dazzling light, like the eruption of 100,000 volcanoes, spreading out a destructive torrent, shocking everyone. Everyone trembled and took a step back. 2 individuals were grazed, their bodies cracking apart and dripping with blood. Their bodies were fiercely blasted outwards. This kind of power was too domineering, exceeding everyone's expectations. Lin Sun raised his brows. This sky-split seal was no small matter. Not only was it filled with the aura of eternity, it even faintly surged with strands of order energy. It was miraculous and unfathomable. If it wasn't for that, Lin Feng wouldn't have been able to resist this attack at all. At the same time, Lin Feng was extremely shocked. The sky-split seal was a treasure obtained by an undying great figure of the Qi clan. It had a great origin, and it was said to be a natural treasure born from the source of order. It was unparalleled in the world, and it was said to be able to overturn the heavens and earth with a single seal. This time, Lin Feng had the chance to borrow this treasure as a trump card when he followed Qi Lingyun. Otherwise, with his status in the Qi clan, he didn't have the qualifications to use this treasure at all. But at this moment, even the powerful sky-split seal was blocked. Lin Sun attacked fiercely, domineering as he attacked once more. Lin Feng didn't dare to be careless, and he almost desperately used the sky-split seal. The power that belonged to the extermination ancestor realm on his body was boundlessly terrifying like a tsunami. Lin Sun was indifferent, and he used the abyssal sword cauldron to block it head-on. Clang! 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 Every single strike was world-shocking. Even though the sky-split seal was undamaged, Lin Feng was shaken to the point that his blood roiled. His figure kept moving backwards, and in the end blood sprayed from his mouth and nose. Kill! At the critical moment, Qi Pejuan attacked. A violet gold gourd appeared before him, and a boundless river of stars poured out from the gourd. It was like an ocean that drowned the heavens and the earth, and it was boundlessly terrifying. The river of stars surged with strands of immortal aura, and it covered the void and destroyed everything. This was an extremely terrifying scene. It was just a river of stars, but it seemed to melt everything in the world and destroy all the living beings within it. On the violet gold gourd, various totems emerged, and it was like the legendary Taoist primogenitor that sat above the 9 heavens, controlling the river of stars from afar and dancing in the universe. Undoubtedly, the violet gold gourd was an incredible weapon of slaughter. It was suffused with immortal divinity, and it wanted to melt Lin Sun. In an instant, Lin Sun's figure that was attacking valiantly became sluggish, and he was struck by the river of stars as if he had fallen into an ocean. On the other side, Lin Feng operated the sky-split seal and attacked fiercely as well. He cooperated with Qi Pejuan, and they actually faintly showed signs of suppressing Lin Sun. Many people's spirits were lifted when they saw this. Qi Lingyun made a prompt decision and said, "Everyone, what are you waiting for? There's no way back now. Let's go together and kill him." Kill. A group of people roared and rushed forward. All kinds of weapons, including pagodas, ancient lamps, jade rulers, swords. The light of treasures fluttered and shot all over the sky, and they rushed towards Lin Sun together. Among them, there were all kinds of extremely mysterious trump cards, like talismans branded with immortal will, and scrolls full of monstrous killing power. Such power could easily kill the Emperor Ancestor. Boom! An earth-shattering roar resounded. An extremely terrible torrent of destruction was produced in the area where Lin Sun was, and it completely drowned the void. This was definitely a fatal calamity. Any Emperor Realm cultivator would not be able to escape death if they were here. However, soon people were shocked. With the splashing of light and treasures, the place where Lin Sun was destroyed, and the void collapsed, but he was safe and sound. He stood there with a deep look in his eyes. The abyssal sword cauldron floated above his head, and hundreds of millions of lights fell down, protecting him as if he was invincible. The terrifying fatal blow just now failed to break the defense of the abyssal sword cauldron. This, Qi Lingyun's expression changed. The pupils of the others contracted, and they felt a chill in their hearts. In this attack, they had used all their trump cards. All of them could threaten the lives of immortals. However, it was still not enough in front of Lin Sun. Clang! Lin Sun's figure did not move, but a Taoist sword swept out of the abyssal sword cauldron and flew straight forward. Pooh! A light sound resounded as the space between the brows of a cultivator exploded apart, and a bloody hole was pierced through his body. Scarlet-red blood sprayed into the air as he fell straight to the ground. This was a Emperor Ancestor who had followed Qi Pejuan for tens of thousands of years, but he could not resist the power of Lin Sun's sword. Suddenly, there was an awkward silence, and the battle cries subsided. Many people were frightened and subconsciously stopped. However, Lin Sun's attack did not stop. The abyssal sword cauldron suppressed the heaven and earth, and endless lights fell like a vast waterfall, and also like the Milky Way. The purple gold gourd and the sky-throwing seal were trembling violently. It was not that these two treasures were not powerful enough, but that the people who used them could not withstand Lin Sun's attack at all. With a bang, several people in the field had their bones broken, and their tendons torn. Their bodies were smashed into pieces, and their primordial spirits turned into ashes. They died immediately. At this time, Lin Sun's murderous intent soared to the sky, and he used the strongest means to kill his enemies. In the end, only Qi Lingyun, Qi Pejuan, and Lin Feng were left on the battlefield. The others were either killed or had already escaped. But at this time, a powerful Qi suddenly broke out, and approached Lin Sun, and hit his back. It was Qi Lingyun. And as soon as she attacked, she came to Lin Sun's back, holding a bloody black demon subduing pestle, and stabbed it towards Lin Sun's back. It was incredibly fast. At this time, Lin Sun was fighting against Lin Feng's sky-throwing seal and Qi Pejuan's purple gold gourd. In other people's eyes, it was impossible for him to avoid this attack from the back. But who would have thought Lin Sun did not dodge at all? Behind him, Greenwood Taoist body suddenly rushed out and punched. The power of the punch could destroy mountains and rivers, and destroy the sun, the moon, and the stars. Clang! In the sound of the collision, although the demon subduing pestle was blocked, Lin Sun was alarmed and felt a sense of crisis. It was also at this moment that the demon-subduing pestle in Qi Lingyun's hand released wisps of forbidden, ferocious aura. A bloody Taoist diagram appeared on the blood-stained pestle and enveloped the Greenwood Taoist body. Greenwood Taoist body flashed and suddenly disappeared from Lin Sun's body. At the same time, the abyssal sword cauldron pressed down, and endless Taoist light emerged, blocking Lin Sun's back. Boom! The void exploded and chaos surged. This place was in chaos. The demon-subduing pestle in Qi Lingyun's hand exploded. It was a secret weapon after all. After its power was blocked, it was no longer a deterrent. Qi Lingyun originally wanted to destroy this rare trump card to make Lin Sun's blood stain in the sky and make him seriously injured. Unfortunately, she miscalculated. She was also decisive. She escaped far away at the first time, but her expression was uncertain. At the same time, Lin Feng attacked Lin Sun again, controlling the sky-throwing seal to attack Lin Sun. Thousands of traces of the Great Way covered the sky and the earth. On the other side, Qi Pejuan used the purple gold gourd to attack Lin Sun. "It's been too long. I'll send you on your way," Lin Sun said and stepped out. The abyssal sword cauldron floated up and down, and its power was unparalleled in the world. Boom! The power of Dozhan surged and swept out. Before long, even Lin Feng and Qi Pejuan could not bear it anymore. They coughed up blood, suppressed by the power of Lin Sun and injured. In the end, Lin Sun roared and used the abyssal sword cauldron to suppress the demon-subduing pestle, confining it in the void and making it unable to move. Immediately after, Lin Sun attacked and punched. Boom! This punch directly penetrated Lin Feng's chest, causing him to explode on the spot. No secret skill or magic treasure could block this peerless attack. This Emperor Zhu Xian, who came from the fifth heaven and was worshipped by the Qi clan of the eighth heaven, was directly killed on the spot. Qi Lingyun's whole body was stiff, as if she had fallen into an ice cave. She had planned to rescue Lin Sun at all costs, but she did not expect it to happen so fast. So fast that she could not save him even if she wanted to. Chapter 2649. This battle had only lasted for the time it took to brew a cup of tea. But Emperor Zhu soon had fallen one after another. Mu Yi, who was killed by Lin Sun's martial will, Zhong Lixiao, whose body was cut open by Lin Sun's Taoist sword, and Lin Feng, who was smashed by Lin Sun's fist. During this period, more and more cultivators, who could be called overlords of the Emperor realm, fell under Lin Sun's feet. Many people had already fled, frightened by Lin Sun's invincible power. This result made people feel like falling into an ice cellar. At this moment, the whole battlefield was silent. At this point, the people who were still alive were in despair. How could they fight? They were no match for Lin Sun at all. What was worse, they couldn't escape even if they wanted to. Qi Pejuan had tried to escape, but he was intercepted by Lin Sun as soon as he moved. Even if he used the forbidden secret method, he couldn't shake the abyssal sword cauldron. This made him completely terrified. At this point in the battle, only he and Qi Lingyun were left. Some had died and some had fled. Qi Lingyun's face was pale. She had arrogantly asked Lin Sun to bow down to her, but now it seemed a little ridiculous. But she was different from Qi Pejuan. She was still calm and didn't panic. Or rather, she still had the confidence. Lin Sun didn't stop. In fact, he had never stopped since the beginning of the battle because he didn't allow his opponent to escape. "I'll fight you to the death." Seeing that Lin Sun was coming at him, Qi Pejuan, who had nowhere to run, let out a roar. As if he was ready to risk everything, countless bright beams of light shot out from between his eyebrows and interweaved into a universe. It was dazzling and vast, and it pressed down on Lin Sun. Rumble! In the universe, the sun, moon, and stars rotated, and the chaotic air was hazy, as if it was real. It was extremely incredible. Lin Sun didn't dodge. His figure shone brightly, and he stepped forward. Monstrous power spread from his body and turned into a deep and immeasurable abyss, directly smashing the world and swallowing the real universe in one fell swoop. Puff! Chi Pujuan spat out a mouthful of blood, and a terrible wound appeared between his eyebrows. He couldn't believe that his strongest talent was swallowed, and he looked so weak. Kill! He activated the purple gold gourd, releasing an undying stellar stream that engulfed the skies, brilliant and dazzling. Lin Sun looked indifferent. His murderous intent was heavy and ruthless. At the same time, his figure flashed, and his 5 great Tao bodies shot out at the same time. They blocked the central immortal court at an unbelievable speed and attacked simultaneously. Boom! Amidst the rain of light, a figure staggered backwards in the sky. Surprisingly, it was Qi Lingyun. She'd utilized some sort of secret technique to actually transform into a formless body in an attempt to leave this place. However, Lin Sun saw through it and blocked it with his 5 Taoist bodies. You've killed so many people. Even if you leave this place alive, where can you escape to once you leave the god's ruins? Qi Lingyun's gaze was icy cold, while her beautiful face was covered in frost. This elegant woman in a long dress and holding a scroll in her hand seemed to be in an extremely sorry state at this moment. She was unable to maintain her composure from before, and the space between her brows was covered in a gloomy expression. Lin Sun ignored him and focused on suppressing Chi Pujuan. Rumble! Just like before, the scene that happened to Lin Feng replayed itself. First, the purple gold gourd was suppressed by the abyssal sword cauldron and imprisoned in the void. After that, Lin Sun took a step forward and punched out. Amidst the unparalleled brilliance, the defensive treasures on Chi Pujuan's body exploded one by one like paper paste. Following that, the layers of defensive Taoist magic that covered Chi Pujuan's body were crushed by the terrifying power of the fist. Puff! With a single punch, he was also killed. His body was directly penetrated and exploded into a rain of blood in the void. Then, he was completely annihilated by the boundless fist force. This Emperor Juexian from the Qi family of the 8th Heaven region also followed in the footsteps of Lin Feng, Zhongli Xiao and Mu Yi and died here. At this moment, Qi Lingyun was the only opponent left in the central immortal court. The heaven and earth trembled and the chaos was hazy. In front of Qi Lingyun, who was blocked in front of the immortal palace, pages of yellowed scriptures appeared. There were a total of 108 pages, and all of them were branded with immortal ancient characters of divinity, wriggling like earthworms. Lin Sun's 5 Taoist bodies attacked together, but they were actually unable to break the defensive power of these pages of scriptures. It should be known that each of the 5 Taoist bodies was comparable to the combat power of Lin Sun himself. Along with Lin Sun becoming an ancestor this time, the 5 Taoist bodies had also transformed, and their combat power was no longer what it used to be. However, the yellowed scriptures were really incredible. The power it produced was obscure and indescribable. It dissolved all the Taoist techniques and power one by one, and it couldn't hurt Qi Lingyun, who was protected by it at all. In the distance, Lin Sun himself walked over. His figure was tall and his black hair was thick. His deep and sharp eyes stared at Qi Lingyun. Above his head was the abyssal sword cauldron. The mouth of the cauldron was like a waterfall, and millions of rays of light fell out, protecting him in it. He was like an immortal with supreme majesty. Seeing this, Qi Lingyun was still as calm as before. She said, "I admit that I misjudged you. Why don't we stop for a while and have a good talk? You don't want to be killed by those old things outside the god's relic when you leave this place, do you?" The pages of the scriptures were shining brightly, turning into a divine rainbow and surrounding her slender figure. There was a faint, obscure and mysterious chanting sound. All attacks were like bubbles and they were blocked outside. This scene made Lin Sun realize that the scroll in Qi Lingyun's hand was probably an incredibly powerful treasure. Swish. After thinking about it, Lin Sun put away the 5 Taoist bodies. Seeing this, Qi Lingyun just breathed a sigh of relief and was about to say something. Lin Sun suddenly stepped forward and smashed the scriptures with the abyssal sword cauldron. Boom! Endless rays of light splashed, and the terrifying and overbearing power spread from the abyssal sword cauldron, shaking the yellowed scriptures violently and rolling. Qi Lingyun, who was in it, was shocked. Her pretty face suddenly changed and she said, "Are you really going to kill me?" Lin Sun didn't say anything and continued to drive the abyssal sword cauldron to smash the scriptures. Dense rumbling sounds resounded. Every time the abyssal sword cauldron struck down, the yellowish pages of the scripture would tremble violently. After a few dozen strikes, the yellowish pages seemed to be unable to endure it any longer, and an ear-piercing buzzing sound resounded. Although she was temporarily not threatened, Qi Lingyun was shocked and angry to see Lin Sun's determination and ruthlessness. An indescribable feeling welled up in her heart. With her status, even in the 8th heaven, she could be considered a dazzling figure. Even some of the older generation had to bow their heads in respect. In the realms below the 8th heaven, she was a goddess above the 9th heaven. She was unreachable and could only be admired. Not to mention emperors, even immortals had to be courteous to her. Because she was Qi Lingyun, the daughter of the current leader of the Qi clan. With this identity, even if she only had a little bit of cultivation, almost no one dared to provoke her, at least in the eternal true world. However, at this moment, Lin Sun's actions had completely shattered all of Qi Lingyun's knowledge, causing her dignity and pride to suffer a heavy blow. A character from the ancient path of the stars was not afraid of all kinds of threats. This was the first time she had met such an unscrupulous and fearless person. Boom! In the end, the defensive power formed by the yellowed scriptures was cracked by the abyssal sword cauldron. Under the impact, Qi Lingyun staggered and almost fell to the ground. Blood dripped from the corners of her mouth, and her beautiful face turned pale. "How dare you!" Seeing Lin Sun's hand reach out and grab her, Qi Lingyun shouted. The jade pendant in front of her, which was branded with the pattern of a yin and yang fish, suddenly released a golden divine light. Buzz! The golden divine light rolled and condensed into an ancient and primitive word Qi, which suddenly bloomed in the void with a fierce and overbearing light of order. This was a surname written by the power of order, representing the power of the Qi clan, one of the 10 immortals. An indescribable fatal threat surged in Lin Sun's heart. There was no doubt that this surname formed by the power of order had unimaginable destructive power. He almost immediately stopped and attacked with the abyssal sword cauldron. Boom! The abyssal sword cauldron glowed and enveloped the golden word Qi in one fell swoop, suppressing it into the cauldron. Immediately after that, a deafening explosion resounded from the abyssal sword cauldron, as if a god was furious and rampaging in the cauldron, causing the abyssal sword cauldron to tremble violently. But in merely a short moment, everything returned to silence. The abyssal sword cauldron flowed with the glow of the Tao, yet it wasn't harmed in the slightest, whereas the golden Qi character that was suppressed within the cauldron had been forcefully crushed by the rebirth order, and it transformed into an extremely copious quintessence energy of order that was absorbed and devoured. Lin Sun even noticed that after the origin of order was absorbed, the order of the immortal path, the order of the netherworld, and the silent spirit of order, peerless, seemed to be alarmed at almost the same time, and they attacked simultaneously to fight for the origin of order. In the blink of an eye, the origin of order was divided into 3 parts, and they were devoured by the order of the immortal path, the order of the netherworld, and the peerless melon. This scene was extremely inconceivable. The order of nirvana was like a mother that absorbed and refined the origin of order it gathered, and then transformed it into nourishment that nurtured the various orders it had reconstructed, causing these origin of order to become stronger as well. Especially peerless, the spirit of order that was like a young girl, after she absorbed a portion of the origin of order, her delicate and fair face became much rosier, and she glowed with vitality. All of this took a long time to describe, yet it actually occurred in an instant. When she saw the trump card she'd utilized to save her life had actually been suppressed so easily, Qi Lingyun seemed as if she'd been struck by lightning, and her pupils dilated while she revealed an expression of disbelief. The origin of order within the jade pendant was the 9th grade heaven rank origin of order possessed by her Qi clan. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary 9th grade heaven rank origin of order, and its might could be said to be terrifying. Even though it was only the word Qi, its might could easily pose a lethal threat to an immortal. Yet now, it had been suppressed so easily. All of this overturned Qi Lingyun's understanding, and it caused her body to tremble while her expression changed completely. Moreover, the gaze she shot at Lin Sun carried uncontrollable terror. Exactly what sort of monster is this fellow before me? Chapter 2650. The yellowed pages of the scriptures danced in the air, but they couldn't stop Lin Sun. When the last trump card of the Qi was suppressed, Qi Lingyun couldn't help but feel a trace of despair. But she wasn't discouraged. Clang! A slender, snow-white sword shot out from her hand like a bolt of lightning. Its sharpness was strong enough to pierce through the sun, moon, and stars. But this sword was caught between Lin Sun's 2 fingers. It buzzed and trembled, unable to break free. Bang! As Lin Sun exerted force between his fingers, the snow-white and slender sword was broken into 2. When I was in the great void immortal realm, I thought that one day, I'd like to see who would bow down to whom. I didn't expect this day to come so soon. Lin Sun's dark eyes locked on Qi Lingyun, but he didn't force her any further. This woman was extremely terrifying. From the start of this battle until now, she had used her trump cards many times. There was the flying shuttle imprinted with undying aura, the blood-stained demonfall pestle, as well as the yellowing scriptures with freakish defensive strength. Moreover, the Qi in the jade pendant, condensed by the power of order, was a fatal threat to anyone. It was no exaggeration to say that if it were any other Juetian great ancestor, they would have died long ago if they were attacked by this series of trump cards. Even an immortal figure might not be able to avoid it. Therefore, even though Lin Sun had gained the upper hand, he still didn't agree. No one knew whether Qi Lingyun had other trump cards. You want me to bow down to you? Qi Lingyun's eyes were cold and disdainful. I, Qi Lingyun, have never bowed down to anyone except my parents. Do you think you're qualified? She was in a dangerous situation, but she still had a kind of pride branded in her bones. Then I'll help you bow down to me. Lin Sun suddenly stepped forward and grabbed Qi Lingyun's throat. Qi Lingyun's fingers turned over, and the yellowed scriptures suddenly turned into a scroll. She waved it in the air. Boom! The obscure and inexplicable light shot out, and the horrible killing power crushed towards Lin Sun. Following that, her figure transformed into countless golden water droplets that flew in all directions. Each water droplet elongated in the void and turned into misty golden threads. Each of them was exactly the same, and it was impossible to tell which water droplet was her real body. Without a doubt, this was an incredible technique. However, Lin Sun looked indifferent. He used Abyssal Sword Cauldron to crush the obscure light emerging from the yellowed scroll. On the other hand, a large abyss suddenly surged out into appearance around him. It blotted out the sky and completely enveloped the entire hall, and it emanated an extremely terrifying devouring force. Rumble! The golden threads that covered the sky instantly fell into the boundless abyss, and they seemed as if they were fiercely crushed by a large hand. They exploded without end and were crushed amidst rumbling and rumbling. One of the golden threads shuddered before revealing Qi Lingyun's figure. However, she was in an extremely sorry state. Her hair was disheveled, her dress was disheveled, her face was snowy white, and there was blood flowing from the corner of her mouth. Open! She let out an angry scream, and a silver divine flame condensed between her white fingers. She gently waved it, and as the silver divine flame flew out, a hole was burned in the abyss. Seeing that Qi Lingyun was about to break free, Lin Sun suddenly rushed over. He grabbed her snow-white neck from behind. At this instant, Qi Lingyun's figure froze on the spot. She didn't dare move in the slightest while her eyes changed indeterminately. There was astonishment and indescribable rage within them. She is the daughter of the dignified Qi clan's patriarch of the eighth heaven, but now she is like a prey, being grabbed by the neck from behind. What do you want? Qi Lingyun was in complete panic. The hand that was choking her neck was simply like the filthiest thing in the world, and it caused goosebumps to arise all over her body. She was on the verge of being unable to endure it. Lower your head, Lin Sun answered casually. He exerted force with his palm and fingers, and Qi Lingyun's snow-white neck bent under the pressure. Her pretty face turned red, and her eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Being forced to lower her head in such a rough way made her so ashamed and angry that she was about to go crazy. Even though she struggled desperately, it was in vain. Her cultivation had been suppressed, and her head was pressed down uncontrollably little by little. At the moment when she bowed her head, Qi Lingyun's inner pride and dignity seemed to be completely shattered. She completely lost control and screamed, "Ah!" Her voice was full of anger and hatred. It resounded through the hall and spread outside the central immortal court. It was enough to frighten ghosts and gods. She had never hated a person so much. Never. Seeing her like this, Lin Sun didn't have the slightest bit of tenderness for the fairer sex. Instead, he felt an indescribable sense of pleasure. Now, it's useless even if you shout yourself hoarse. Lin Sun brought Qi Lingyun in front of him and slapped her beautiful face, causing her mouth and nose to bleed and see stars before her eyes. She was dumbfounded. Then, her body trembled violently. It was obvious that she was angered to the extreme. Her eyes were filled with hatred. This was the first time in her life that she was slapped. The feeling made her go crazy. Lin Sun, kill me if you have the guts. Kill me! Qi Lingyun gritted her teeth so hard that they almost broke. Her expression was livid. It was hard to imagine that she was still the elegant and composed woman from before. I said that I will make you bow down to me. How can I kill you so easily? Lin Sun's words made Qi Lingyun feel as if she was poured with a bucket of cold water. She could vaguely guess the ending she was about to face, and she couldn't help but feel despair. Perhaps the most terrifying thing in this world wasn't death, but being unable to live or die. Qi Lingyun stared at Lin Sun and said in a hoarse voice, "Just you wait. I won't let you go. The Qi clan will never let a demon like you live." Lin Sun smiled lightly and said, "I believe Zhongli Xiao, Qi Pejuan, and Mu Yi thought the same as you before they died. Unfortunately, since I roamed the world until now, anyone who threatened me like this, no matter who it was or what power it was, didn't have a good ending. If the Qi clan becomes my enemy, they're bound to be no exception." As soon as he finished speaking, he exerted force in his hand and directly knocked Qi Lingyun out, and then he threw her into the abyssal sword cauldron and suppressed her alive. After that, Lin Sun went straight to the central immortal court. On the peak of the towering mountain, he stood alone, overlooking the land below. There were no traces of cultivators on the plateau, and there was only a vortex passageway floating in the sky above the plateau. That was the exit. Obviously, those cultivators that had fled earlier had left through the vortex passageway. Fortunately, they didn't stay behind. Lin Sun thought of Xiang Xiaoyuan and Lu Xiangque, and he heaved a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Before the battle erupted, he'd already warned them via voice transmission. Leave immediately and don't get involved in this slaughter. At the beginning, Xiang Xiaoyuan and Lu Xiangque both refused and insisted on staying because they were worried that Lin Sun would be defeated. They'd rather stay and help him than leave. But as Lin Sun displayed his invincible might and swept away all the heroes, the two were shocked and finally changed their minds and left in advance. After a moment of silence, Lin Sun turned around and returned to the central immortal court. Inside the immortal palace, it was a mess. The thick smell of blood filled the air in the white mist. Almost all the corpses of the enemies were gone, and only some relics were scattered in different areas. Purple gold gourd, sky-throwing seal, great halberd, vase, ancient lamp. Further away, the primordial tree of myriad Tau quietly dropped a rain of green light, peaceful and tranquil. Lin soon waved his sleeves and collected the spoils on the ground one by one. Then, he casually sat under the primordial tree of myriad Tau. The battle finally came to an end. In the first round, he entered the battlefield of gods and killed Nan Tianba, Nan Tianjing, and Nan Yongqiang, causing a great sensation. In the second round, the Great Hunt, Li Henshui and other cultivators of the Li clan were all wiped out by Lin Sun with a bloody and brilliant record. He became the first in the Great Hunt. And in the third round, he was also the only one who won the title of the Chosen One and entered the Central Immortal Court. Here, he comprehended the Tao under the primordial tree and unintentionally attracted an unprecedented great tribulation. At the same time that his Tao and technique fused to the extreme and made a breakthrough, he also passed the Ancestor Ascension tribulation, allowing his cultivation to step into the Ancestor Ascension realm in one go. In the Emperor realm of the world, Emperor Ancestor was the most respected. On the road to the top, Emperor Ancestor Ju was the king. And Lin Sun was invincible in the Emperor Ancestor realm. The reason was that the complete Tao of Ancestor realm he mastered was not one, but he could condense all the Tao into the Tao of Ancestor realm. This was fundamentally different from the ordinary ancestors of one Tao. Therefore, he could be called the Supreme Myriad Tao Ancestor. How terrifying was this realm! The incomparably bloody battle from before had vividly displayed how monstrous this realm was. Even the powerful Emperor Ancestor Juetian from the Eighth Heaven, such as Mu Yi, Zhongli Shao, and Qi Pejuan, were easily suppressed in a head-on confrontation. How terrifying was Qi Lingyun, who mastered all kinds of heaven-defying trump cards and possessed incredible secret magic, but it was difficult for him to resist Lin Sun's killing. In this battle alone, nearly 100 cultivators were killed by Lin Sun, including many overlord existences such as Emperor Ancestor and Peak Eighth Heaven Emperors. It was no exaggeration to say that this battle had already established Lin Sun's invincibility in this realm and his qualification to be called a master above the Emperor path. The primordial tree sprinkled hundreds of millions of green light rain, bathing Lin Sun's figure in it. The previous battle was like a rare tempering, which helped him consolidate the cultivation of the ancestor realm that he had just broken through. Now that he meditated, he had a different feeling. The realm of returning to the ancestors. It meant that his cultivation began to enter a state of seeking the original origin of the Tao. Ancestor was the original meaning. In this realm, cultivators were comprehending the phenomena of the world, the birth of all things in the universe, and the most primitive profundities of the grand Tao that were revealed by it. And above the ancestor realm was the immortal Tao. The immortal realm was a higher level of the Tao after seeing through the original mystery of the formation of all things in the world. Just like the name of this realm, those who set foot in this realm could live as long as the heaven and be immortal. Chapter 26:51. The path towards the eternal Tao was divided into 3 realms. They were heavenly longevity, nirvana, and transcendence. The heavenly longevity realm was the first threshold of the eternal path towards the Tao. As its name implied, it was to live as long as the heavens. The so-called heaven actually represented the grand Tao. As long as the grand Tao remained, one's lifespan would be boundless, and it could be said to be eternal. In the Emperor Tao Ancestor realm, the secrets of the ancestors were the key to open the door to the immortal realm, the heavenly longevity realm. Seeing through the earliest profundities of everything in the universe was equivalent to grasping the complete essence of a world, and it was sufficient to allow one's body to undergo a transformation, live as long as the heavens, and enjoy eternity. However, this threshold had trapped countless cultivators since the ancient times until now, and there might not even be a single eternal figure amongst 10,000 imperial ancestors. This realm was obscure, and it wasn't something that could be touched by persevering and diligent cultivation. Instead, one needed heavenly luck, opportunity, great wisdom, and great willpower to have any hope of touching the threshold of this realm. Ever since the primordial era ended and the starry sky ancient path was covered by the Forbidden Order, the highest cultivation level in the current world was only at the Emperor Ancestor realm. No one could reach the immortal realm. Why? The core of it was that the starry sky ancient path didn't possess the fortune to allow those ancestor realm figures to step onto the path of the eternal Tao. This was also the reason why all those who had ambitions towards a higher path of Tao longed to head to the eternal true world over the course of countless years. Because only in the eternal true world existed the kismet and the serendipity needed to step into the path of immortality. Of course, just luck and opportunities were far from enough. Great wisdom and perseverance were also required. However, for Lin Sun, it was still too early to talk about seeking the path of immortality. He'd just stepped into the ancestor realm, and his current cultivation was still at the early stage of this realm. It was far from the time to consider attaining immortality. Time flew by. The primordial myriad Tao tree swayed and rustled like the chanting of scriptures. Lin Sun sat still under the tree with his legs crossed, feeling all the things he had just experienced and consolidating his Tao fruit. In the last era, the heavenly chosen battle would end on the same day that the assembly of the immortal court came to an end. According to this time, there were still 9 days before the end of the god's relic for Lin Sun. In other words, he still had 9 days to prepare for his departure. At the same time, outside the ruins of the god, as the cultivators that had escaped the ruins of the gods returned, news of what had occurred during the Grand Hunt and the Ascendant Stage had spread as well. For a time, it caused a huge uproar. Is Lin Sun really so powerful? Countless people were shocked by Lin Sun's bloody slaughter in the secret realm of gods. They couldn't believe it. In the hearts of people, the top forces from the seventh heaven, such as the 4 great clans of the East Imperial family, are already like the rulers of the heavens, and they can only look up to and revere them. But in the Great Hunt, Li Henshui and other Li clansmen from one of the 4 East royal clans were all killed by Lin Sun. The one and only heaven's chosen one, the primordial myriad Tao tree, overcoming an unprecedented tribulation, killing a group of heroes in the central immortal court. On the other hand, when they found out about Lin Sun's performance in the central immortal court, many people were shocked to the point their hearts trembled, and they were utterly unable to maintain their composure while their expressions changed. Before the opening of the god's relic, many people in Chaotian City doubted whether Lin Sun, who was targeted by many forces, would dare to participate in it. But now, Lin Sun had become the most dazzling and ruthless person in the god's relic. There was no need to mention the casualties suffered by the 4 clans of the East Imperial family. Just the number of nobles from the 8th heaven who died in his hands was enough to shock and terrify anyone. Zhong Lixiao, Qi Pejuan, Mu Yi, which one of them wasn't the Ju-ing Emperor ancestor who shone brightly in the eternal true world. Any one of their identities could make the immortal emperor clans of the 7th heaven wary. But now, these nobles from the top 10 immortal forces of the 8th heaven were all killed by Lin Sun alone in the central immortal court. If this matter were to spread back to the eternal true world, it would definitely cause a huge uproar, and the whole world would be shocked. The Fu family, one of the immortal forces of the 8th heaven, has made it clear that they will no longer recruit Lin Sun. They have also called upon the heroes of the world to kill this evil person together. Very soon, a piece of news spread from Chaotian City, causing another sensation. No one would forget that when Lin Sun entered Chaotian City and took the test on the realm battle steel, an old man from the Fu family took the initiative to invite him to join the Fu family. But now, the Fu family changed their mind and expressed their firm determination to get rid of Lin soon. Obviously, under such circumstances, the Fu family doesn't want to go against the trend, and decisively gave up on recruiting ruthless Lin. Who can be blamed for this? Just in the central immortal court alone, the descendants of the Qi family, Mu family, and Zhongli family were killed by vicious Lin. You should know that in the 8th heaven, although the top 10 immortal giants are in a competitive relationship, when it comes to dealing with outsiders, they are united. Does this mean that from now on, ruthless Lin can no longer be recruited by the 8th heaven? Discussions arose everywhere, and everyone couldn't calm down. Lin Sun was too tyrannical. He killed countless heroes in the mysterious realm, and the blood he stirred up was too shocking. Even if they could walk out of it alive, they were doomed to die in the end. In the vast starry sky, the atmosphere was so heavy that people couldn't breathe. Everyone was waiting. Things are getting tricky. On the side of the 4 Eastern Imperial clans, Nan Faidu, who had a willow beard fluttering in the wind, frowned. Who would have thought that a descendant of Fang Xiyuan would dare to do such a daring thing? Gu Lingzhen, who was dressed in a golden robe and holding a snow-white flying sword between her fingers, also had a gloomy expression on her beautiful face. If the 4 immortal forces of the Qi family, Zhongli family, and Mu family hear the news and come, I'm afraid that it will be extremely disadvantageous to our actions. Li Shangjuan, who was riding on a green centipede and holding a purple jade ruler, didn't hide his worry at all. Hearing this, Nan Faidu and Gu Lingzhen were both silent, and the expression in their eyes fluctuated. Originally, they were waiting here just to capture Lin Sun and seize his fortune, but who would have thought that the situation would develop to this point, completely beyond their imagination? Lin Sun was bold enough to kill the nobles of the 8th heaven, which was no different from piercing the sky. Under such circumstances, how could the immortal forces of the 8th heaven let it go? In this way, it wouldn't be easy for the 4 Eastern Imperial clans to capture Lin Sun first. Snatching Lin Sun from the immortal forces? That was no different from snatching food from a tiger's mouth. What made Nan Faidu and the others most worried was that this time, almost all the experts of the 4 Eastern Imperial clans suffered heavy casualties, and only a few survived in the end. Under such circumstances, even if it wasn't for Lin Sun's fortune, they wouldn't be able to tolerate Lin Sun's survival. But the key was that Lin Sun hadn't come out of the god's relic yet, and once the immortal forces arrived, they wouldn't have the chance to kill Lin Sun. This damned bastard, he's too good at causing trouble. Nan Faidu couldn't help but curse. Gu Lingzhen and Li Shangjuan's expressions weren't good either. They had seen troublemakers before, but they had never seen one like Lin Sun. They couldn't help but suspect that if there was a descendant of the Eternal God clan among the experts who entered the god's secret realm, Lin Sun wouldn't be so polite. Look, the power of the rules of the god's secret realm is collapsing and cracking. Yunjiu, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke. 2 beams of light shot out from his eyes as he gazed at the god's relic in the distance. Others might not be able to sense it, but immortal forces like them could keenly sense that the god's relic was changing like the wings of a butterfly. It was like an ancient building that had been eroded by the wind for too long, and it was slowly decaying and cracking. Doesn't this mean that we can take this opportunity to kill our way into the god's relic? Nan Faidu's eyes lit up and he was in high spirits. If that's the case, then we can kill this kid before the immortal giants arrive. Gu Lingzhen's lips curled up into a smile. All right, it's decided. Li Shangjuan, who had the demeanor of an immortal, had an undisguised killing intent in the depths of his eyes. This time, all the experts of the Li clan had been wiped out, which made Li Shangjuan feel extremely humiliated and angry. Chaotian City. Blue Sparrow was dumbfounded. There was only one thought in her mind. What should she do now? What happened in the god's relic had long been spread back to Chaotian City, causing a sensation in the whole city. Countless cultivators were dumbfounded. Even the cyan sparrow didn't expect Lin Sun to be so ferocious. Not only did he kill the powerhouses of the 4 Eastern Emperor clans, he even killed several immortal giants from the 8th heaven. Originally, Blue Sparrow planned to ask the Yuan family for help. Even if she couldn't help Lin Sun on the surface, it was possible to help Lin Sun secretly. But now, Blue Sparrow decisively gave up this idea. After all, there was no friendship between Lin Sun and the Yuan family. Under such circumstances, how could the Yuan family offend the immortal forces of the 8th heaven for Lin Sun? Even Blue Sparrow couldn't do it. If only Miss was here. Blue Sparrow wailed in her heart, anxious like an ant on a hot pot. What should she do? What should she do? In this world, who could save Lin Sun from the fire and water in such a situation? And in Chaotian City, after the shock, all the cultivators couldn't help but have the same thought. In such a situation, when they left the god's relic, would Lin Sun still have a chance to survive? Of course. In a tea house, Yunlu, who had entered the vast 1,000 battle domains with Lin Sun, had an unfathomable luster in his eyes. The skinny monk from the minor thunderclap of the great thunderclap world thought in his heart, the Fangtsuan lineage has been plotting for an eternity. If we were to die here, the path of cultivation would be too boring. Chapter 2652. Under the Primordial Tao Tree. Lin Sun woke up from his meditation and his cultivation was completely stabilized. The extermination progenitor realm was indeed different. The power he grasped was far stronger than before. Lin Sun reckoned that with his current combat strength, he probably couldn't find many people in the same realm who could fight him. After all, he could already kill an emperor ancestor when he was in the 8th stage of the extermination progenitor realm. Now that he had become a peerless progenitor, he didn't even put ordinary emperor ancestors in his eyes. Even other peerless progenitors couldn't withstand his attack. The defeat of Mu Yi, Zhongli Xiao, Lin Feng, and the others was the best proof. I just don't know if I'll be able to contend against a heavenly longevity realm expert, Lin Sun pondered. In the previous battles, Qi Lingyun had used many trump cards imprinted with the will of an immortal realm expert, but they were all neutralized by the abyssal sword cauldron. Although it was just the power of an immortal and not a true immortal, it gave Lin Sun a lot of confidence. The progenitor realm was known as the natural chasm of the Emperor's path. No one had ever crossed it, but didn't he still break through it in the end? The path of immortality might be more terrifying and supreme than the Emperor's path, but it didn't mean that it couldn't be killed by someone who surpassed it. However, Lin Sun had never fought with an immortal before, so he didn't know much about the power of such an existence. He wasn't sure if he could fight them in battle. Although his cultivation was heaven-defying, he was still in the early stage of the progenitor realm. There's probably a trap set up outside the god's secret realm, waiting for me to get out. Lin Sun got up from his meditation and his eyes were calm. He made a decision after thinking for a while. Buzz, the Tower of Ceaseless, appeared, followed by Ling Xuanzi and Uncle Master Kong Ju. What's going on? Could it be that you intend to take the initiative to ask me for help? Ling Xuanzi had a surprised look on his face. Kong Ju's hair and beard were messy. He squatted on the ground, holding a jar of winding stream goblet and sipping on it, looking like he was drunk. Lin Sun looked at Ling Xuanzi and said, "With your ability, you shouldn't be unaware of what happened in the ruins of the gods, right?" Ling Xuanzi scoffed and chuckled. "Little junior brother, you're too kind. I was only able to catch a glimpse of a few scenes. TSK. This is the root of the immortal Tao, the primordial myriad Tao tree? It really is boundlessly profound and can be called an era treasure." As he spoke, he stared at the primordial tree and began to size it up. His eyes were bright and carried a hint of passion. "Little junior brother, why don't you give this tree to me? Perhaps I can use this tree to deduce some things that belong to the previous era." "Not a chance." Lin Sun refused without hesitation. With a wave of his sleeve, The primordial Tao tree turned into a verdant glow and plunged into his body. It took root in his life Emperor realm, forming a nice contrast with the chaos tree that had taken root here before. Sigh, little junior brother, you're still guarding against me like a thief. Ling Xuanzi sighed, looking like he was hurt. Lin Sun said, Fourth senior brother, I have a favor to ask. Ling Xuanzi raised his eyebrows and seemed to realize something. He stopped joking and said, What is it? You should be clear about the current situation. I hope you can leave with Martial Uncle, Lin Sun said seriously. Ling Xuanzi was stunned. You're not planning to fight against an immortal realm enemy alone, are you? Lin Sun said, Do you think I have a choice? Ling Xuanzi seemed to be very angry. He rolled his eyes and pointed at his nose. Me? Do you treat me as if I don't exist? I'm puzzled. Why do I have such a low position in your heart? Lin Sun was suspicious. You're not in the Emperor realm? Ling Xuanzi's handsome face darkened. Do you think that the only person who can help you to trample on evil god Dishi and make him open his heart on his own initiative to reveal the humiliation of being cuckolded is merely an Emperor realm? Lin Sun stared at Ling Xuanzi for a moment and said, But you really look like you're only in the Emperor realm. Divine objects conceal themselves, and so do humans. Back in the core ruins, fourth senior brother didn't plan to bully you, and he didn't use his higher cultivation to attack you. That's why he suppressed his cultivation and fought you fairly. Otherwise, I would have been able to defeat you with a single finger. Ling Xuanzi raised his fingertips with a proud face. Lin Sun was startled and said, So, you can fight against immortals? What do you mean fight? Killing them like slaughtering chickens? Ling Xuanzi said without thinking. Lin Sun still didn't believe it. He shook his head and said, Forget it. I know you're saying this because you don't want to leave. I understand your feelings as a senior brother. But things are already so serious. Do you want Martial Uncle to suffer like you? Ling Xuanzi was so angry that he laughed. He pointed at Lin Sun and said, You're still the lotus in Master's eyes. I didn't expect you to be so stupid. Not to mention me. Do you think our martial Uncle Kong Ju has really become a useless person who lost all his cultivation? Lin Sun frowned and glanced at Kong Ju, who was drunk and paralyzed on the ground. He said, No, it's still too risky. Master said that there's something wrong with Martial Uncle's state of mind. How can we put the hope of resolving this crisis on Martial Uncle? Looking at Lin Sun's stubborn look, Ling Xuanzi was so angry that he gritted his teeth and said, Little junior brother, can't you have more confidence in people? I'm begging you. Can you be merciful and let me and Martial Uncle Kong Ju stay? Lin Sun also sighed and said with a helpless look, This is what you asked for. If something happens, don't regret it. Ha, do you think fourth senior brother is a person who will regret? I've been suppressed by Master for countless years. Have you ever seen me regret it? Ling Xuanzi laughed, but the next moment his smile froze. He realized something and pointed at Lin Sun's nose, saying, Little junior brother, you've schemed against me. Lin Sun was surprised. Why do you say this, senior brother? Ling Xuanzi's expression was uncertain. He had realized that he had been fooled. He had said a long time ago that unless Lin Sun took the initiative to ask him for help, he would not show up. But now it became that he took the initiative to ask Lin Sun to help him. You bastard, you're still trying to act innocent after getting a bargain. You're simply rotten to the core. If it was someone else who tried to trick me like this, they would have died 1,000 times over. Ling Xuanzi had a wretched expression on his face. He was depressed, angry, and helpless. He couldn't regret it. He just said that he had never regretted being suppressed by Master for countless years. Now he changed his mind. Wasn't it tantamount to slapping himself in the face? The most hateful thing was that Lin Sun still pretended not to know, which made Ling Xuanzi gnash his teeth with hatred. He felt like a goose pecked in the eye by a goose. Little junior brother, I can help you, but you have to lend me Endless Tower and 3,000 floating sinks, said Ling Xuanzi. Lin Sun said solemnly, Senior brother, we should work together at this time. Even if you don't say it, I will lend you these 2 treasures. As he spoke, he handed Endless Tower and 3,000 floating sinks to Ling Xuanzi. Looking at Lin Sun's righteous attitude, Ling Xuanzi's lips twitched and he said, Little junior brother, you win. Lin Sun couldn't help laughing in the end. Just as Ling Xuanzi guessed, under such circumstances, how could he let go of such a good helper like Ling Xuanzi? Of course, it was impossible to beg, so he could only use some trick. Ling Xuanzi couldn't help but shake his head and laugh when he saw this. These were harmless jokes in the end. Conversely, he felt rather happy because Lin Sun was willing to do this. At the very least, this little junior brother that had always been extremely resistant to him showed signs of accepting him. This was naturally extremely good for Ling Xuanzi. No one knew that to someone like him who had been abandoned by his parents at a young age and was viewed as a great medicine by his master, Minuscule Mountain was like his home in his heart. This was also the reason why he never complained even when he was suppressed by his master for countless years. Minuscule Mountain was a soft place in his heart that he had to protect. I heard that Old Man Dish has already escaped, and when he did, he even killed many undying beings. If I'm not wrong, that old man is definitely hiding outside the god's secret realm. Ling Xuanzi spoke with fervor and assurance. To us, ordinary immortal realm figures don't have to be afraid of anything at all, but we have to be careful when dealing with Old Man Dishy. Back then, when I confronted him in front of the ancient well, I had already noticed that this fellow was a tough one. He was suppressed for 1,000,000 years in the previous era, and after the era was destroyed, he was lucky enough to survive. This kind of person is very terrifying. Lin Sun's heart shivered. If it wasn't for Ling Xuanzi's reminder, he would have almost forgotten about the potential threat that was Dish. Dish was indeed an unimaginably terrifying opponent. After breaking free, even though he was surrounded by many undying beings, he still managed to kill some of his opponents and destroy the 9th pass of the Deathless. This was something that had never happened before. Rumor had it that Dish died in the siege, and some said that he escaped with injuries. But both Lin Sun and Ling Xuanzi firmly believed that the old man was definitely still alive. It was destined that he wouldn't miss the opportunity of the god's ruins. After all, as a terrifying existence in the last era, Dish should know how extraordinary the Central Immortal Court's fortune was. Apart from that, Lin Sun also suspected that the good fortune jade disc in his hand was enough to attract Dish over. It's really a murderous calamity. Lin Sun sighed. The 4 Eastern Imperial clans, the undying beings of the 8th heaven, and Dish, all of these murderous calamities were enough to make anyone in the world tremble in fear and despair. Now this is satisfying. Ling Xuanzi licked his lips as a wisp of wanton madness appeared on his handsome face. After being suppressed by our master for so many years, this world actually doesn't know of my existence. This time, it's my turn to make an appearance. P.S. Starting tomorrow, Goldfish will be on a business trip for 4 to 5 days, but we will do our best to ensure that the updates are as usual. Chapter 2653. Looking at the inexplicably excited Ling Xuanzi, Lin Sun recalled the scene when he first met him. At that time, Ling Xuanzi had just escaped from the core ruins. He was dressed in a green robe and looked like a handsome young man. His black hair was tied behind his head casually. He stretched himself, stretched out his hands, and squinted at the sky. It seemed as if countless years of suppression, countless years of darkness, and suppression had obtained a form of release and venting at this instant. He once said, "Only by standing above the great way and attaining an immortal body can one truly become the master of heaven and the supreme master of all heavens." Unfortunately, before he was suppressed, Ling Xuanzi hadn't walked out of the core mountain and was not famous in the world. The world didn't know that Ling Xuanzi was called the best in the world by the owner of the core mountain. After walking out of the suppression, he admitted defeat in the bet with Lin Sun and took the initiative to enter the Tower of Endless. He had never really revealed his elegance to the world. Until now, Ling Xuanzi seemed to have waited for an opportunity. Lin Sun couldn't understand fourth senior brother's feelings. No one in this world could really empathize with him. He only knew that Ling Xuanzi, who had been suppressed for too long, was eager to fight. Maybe it was to vent or to show off, or to prove his persistence in the great way. Wine, I want to drink more wine. Next to him, Kong Ju, who was sitting on the ground, raised the empty wine jar and shouted at Lin Sun pitifully. Ling Xuanzi squatted down with a smile and stared at Kong Ju as he said, "Martial uncle, no matter if you're really crazy or just putting on an act, if something happens to little junior brother and I this time, you won't be able to drink such fine wine anymore." Kong Ju's eyes were blank and he said, "If you don't let me drink, I'd rather die." Ling Xuanzi's eyes were deep and he said, "You've been in Chaotian City for many years. You said you're waiting for someone to take you home, but you should know that under the cover of Haotian order, no one can do anything to you if you don't want to leave." Kong Ju shouted angrily, "Why don't you give me wine to drink?" Ling Xuanzi continued, "If I'm not wrong, you're waiting for little junior brother. Because only the rebirth order in little junior brother can resist the great heaven order and take you away from Chaotian City." Lin Sun couldn't bear to interrupt Ling Xuanzi, but he suddenly remembered something. Back in the nirvana of freedom, Kong Ju had traversed the starry sky to seize the nirvana fortune, but he had been stopped by the will of the master of the core dimension. Lin Sun clearly remembered that Kong Ju once said to him, "Do you want to consider coming with me? No matter which space-time plane you are in, there are very few people who can teach you to reach the peak of immortality and become a venerable. And I am one of them." At that time, Lin Sun didn't know what it meant to reach the peak of immortality and become a venerable. But now that he thought about it, he suddenly realized that if there wasn't something wrong with this martial uncle's mental state, then it was very likely that he was a terrifying existence on the eternal path towards the Tao. Thinking of this, Lin Sun couldn't help but have a strange feeling. Martial Uncle Kong Ju, who had a serious problem with his Taoist heart, had been waiting in Chaotian City all these years. Was he really waiting for Lin Sun? Because only Lin Sun had mastered the nirvana fortune, and according to what his master said, Kong Ju had a problem with his Taoist heart because of his obsession with the Tao of immortality. And Lin Sun had the nirvana order, which was equivalent to having the potential to become an immortal supreme. The Tao of immortality, nirvana of freedom, eternal perdition, lone lotus. This Taoist hymn simply contained too many extraordinary meanings, which made Lin Sun have a new understanding every time he comprehended it over the years. Just like the Tao of immortality, wasn't it related to the nirvana order he had obtained? And he was regarded as the lone lotus. "Wine, I want to drink." Kong Ju's voice was a little sobbing. Lin Sun woke up from his contemplation and saw that the martial uncle, who was regarded as unprecedented and unique, was like a madman. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart, took out a jar of winding water goblet and handed it over. The latter immediately became ecstatic and drank heartily. "Junior brother, in fact, I'm not sure whether martial uncle is really crazy. But in my opinion, since he is willing to wait in Chaotian City for so many years, he must have made some kind of decision when he was sober. I'm even sure that the person he is waiting for is you, because only you can help him rebuild his Taoist heart." Ling Xuanzi stood up and transmitted his voice. "But I have to remind you, don't take the nirvana order to test. Martial uncle has a problem with his state of mind, so you can't treat it normally at all. Otherwise, if it is taken away by him, you will be completely finished." Lin Sun was stunned for a moment and nodded. "Yo, the opponent is here. Is it finally going to start?" Ling Xuanzi suddenly looked outside the central immortal court, and a cold light flashed like hunger and thirst in the depths of his clear eyes. Outside the central immortal court, the originally quiet world was suddenly filled with an invisible and terrifying aura, and the void seemed to be frozen. Following that, 4 figures emerged silently. Nanfidu, with his willow beard and bearing like a god, stood in the void with his hands behind his back. Wisps of the immortal law surrounded him like a divine halo. Gu Lingzhen, who was beautiful and dressed in a golden robe, stood at the side. A snow-white flying sword danced between her fair and slender fingers. Li Shangjuan, who was riding a green stallion and holding a purple jade ruler, looked like an immortal. As soon as he appeared, his eyes looked at the central immortal court on the peak of the mountain. Yun Jue, who was stepping on a blood-stained scabbard and had gray hair, was covered in a layer of obscure killing intent. When his eyes opened and closed, they were as sharp as swords, as if they could tear the sky apart. The 4 immortal figures from the 4 Eastern imperial clans had arrived at this moment. Although they did not reveal their divine power, their appearance made the world seem dim and reduced to a background. The central immortal court is regarded as the supreme place of the last era. It is truly a miracle that it was not destroyed in the destruction of the era, Nanfidu sighed. He seemed very relaxed, like a tourist paying homage to a historical site. Unfortunately, such a supreme fortune was actually obtained by a disciple of Feng Siyuan. It's simply a waste of God's given gift. I'll definitely make him obediently spit out the primordial myriad Dao tree after I capture this kid. Gu Lingzhen's beautiful eyes were indifferent, and her words were full of undisguised coldness. In addition to the primordial Daos tree, this boy has a lot of good things. I am very interested in the sword cauldron in his hand. It is said that even the power of the immortal will can be dissolved. This is not an ordinary treasure. Li Shangjuan, who was riding on a green stallion, said leisurely. This time, being able to enter the gods' ruins ahead of time made them feel particularly relaxed, because they could capture Lin Sun before the great figures of the 8th heaven arrived. This was undoubtedly equivalent to solving a thorny problem for them. As for Lin Sun, no matter how heaven-defying the Zhu Xian emperor ancestor was, how could he compete with them, who had set foot on the immortal way? Dealing with him was as easy as killing a chicken or a monkey. I want the doppelganger inheritance in his body. It is said that it has the same effect as the Fu family's 4 symbols 9 spirits body. Yun Jue also spoke, and her words were as sonorous as a sword. At this moment, a sneer sounded from the central immortal court. In your dreams, why don't you take a piss and look at yourself? Do you really think that you can do whatever you want with that little bit of cultivation? The voice was full of disdain. Nanfidu frowned. A huge wave of willpower rushed out of his body and swept towards the central immortal court. The nearby void collapsed, as if it couldn't bear the terrifying aura of the willpower. But in just a moment, Nanfidu let out a muffled groan, and the willpower he released quickly retreated, as if it had suffered a heavy blow. A trace of surprise appeared on his face. At the same time, Li Shangjuan, Gu Lingzhen, and Yun Jue narrowed their eyes and looked at the central immortal court from afar. A handsome figure appeared. His green clothes fluttered in the wind, and his black hair was tied behind his head, revealing a handsome and youthful face. He stood at the peak of the mountain with his hands behind his back and looked down. An indescribable glow flickered in the depths of his eyes. Just the 4 of you? It was a light sentence that seemed to be filled with disappointment. However, the undisguised disdain in the words could be clearly felt by everyone. Who are you? Nanfidu frowned, but he wasn't angry. Instead, he was surprised because he recognized that the green-clothed young man wasn't Lin Sun, whom they were here to capture and kill. Ling Xuanzi smiled and said in a clear voice, "Listen up, I'm the 4th successor of Fangtsuan Mountain, Ling Xuanzi." Nanfidu and the others looked at each other. Ling Xuanzi? I've never heard of him. They knew Mount Innerheart better than anyone else, and they knew some of the successors of Mount Innerheart, such as the first successor, the third successor, Ruosu, and so on. The only person they had never heard of was Ling Xuanzi. As a result, they were slightly startled. The corners of Ling Xuanzi's lips twitched slightly when he saw everything. Then, he smiled and said, "I've never heard of you before, but it doesn't matter now. Because from today onward, my name will be spread throughout the world. Seeing me is like seeing the heavens." The last sentence was uttered by him with lofty sentiments. However, the scene was cold. Nanfaidu and the others were sneering with disdain and coldness in their eyes, as if they were listening to a great joke. This made Ling Xuanzi feel terrible. He felt as if his dignity was being silently slandered and attacked. He sighed in his heart. "Master, oh master, if you hadn't suppressed me for so many years, how could these bastards not know my name and not fear my dignity? I don't care who you are, and I don't care which successor of Mount Innerheart you are. Since you dare to get involved in this, only death awaits you." Nanfaidu's eyes were indifferent and filled with dignity. "Why waste your breath on a braggart? Just kill him." Yunjiu seemed to be slightly impatient. He raised his hand and pointed as he spoke. Clang! A crimson sword chi shot out from the blood-stained scabbard beneath his feet. It tore through the sky and slashed at Ling Xuanzi, who was at the peak of the mountain. Chapter 26:54. This sword strike was filled with the aura of eternity, and it caused numerous horrifying rifts to appear in the sky. Lin Sun, who was standing in the central immortal court and watching the sword, couldn't help but shrink his black pupils as he felt a strong sense of threat. This was the true power of an undying being. In comparison, the secret treasures that were imprinted with the aura of immortality lacked a unique spirituality. It was a spirituality that belonged to an immortal being's intelligence, will, and killing intent. Naturally, the difference in power was like heaven and earth. At least, Lin Sun knew that if it were him, he would have to use all his strength to operate the abyssal sword cauldron to resist the sword. Facing such a sword, Ling Xuanzi flicked his finger. Bang! The 3000 long red sword chi was instantly cut into two, and it fell from the sky like a dead snake before transforming into a rain of light. Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned by his casual attitude. But Ling Xuanzi seemed to be very annoyed, and he felt as if he'd suffered a great provocation. A wisp of gloominess suffused his handsome face as he smiled mischievously. "What kind of three-legged cat dares to wantonly attack me? Truly preposterous." His voice was like an icy wind that pierced through the sky and covered the heavens and earth, causing the eyelids of Nanfaidu, Gu Lingzhen, and the others to twitch. A terrifying might suddenly surged out from Ling Xuanzi's body, and the countless apertures on his body absorbed the laws of the Grand Tao. Azure light flowed like water, and numerous translucent eternal flowers that were translucent like glass condensed. Boundless divine radiance enveloped his body, causing every single move he made to carry boundless might. Looking from afar, it was as if a deity had descended upon the world, his might shaking the heavens. Undying. Nanfaidu and others were shocked. Before they came here, they didn't expect that Lin Sun had such a backer. Things were getting a little tricky. They looked at each other and frowned. If he wanted to kill Lin Sun, it would be as easy as blowing off dust. But if he wanted to kill an undying person, he would have to use some method. "We can't delay any longer. Let's end this quickly." Yun Jiwei made a prompt decision. The blood-stained scabbard beneath his feet buzzed as he shot up into the sky. As he stood still, the billowing murderous aura turned into the power of black thunder and condensed into a divine halo that appeared behind his head. The divine halo was filled with a terrifying torrent of the great path. It was formed by the immortal laws. Whoosh! Yunjiu slashed with his finger and black lightning gathered, turning into a buzzing divine sword that shone with an indestructible luster as it slashed towards Ling Xuanzi. Lin Sun felt a stinging pain in his eyes. His body and mind were greatly frightened, and his hair stood on end. This sword was more than twice as powerful as the previous one. It was beyond Lin's imagination and had completely exceeded the scope of Lin's cognition. In the face of such a sword, Lin soon didn't have the slightest confidence to withstand it, because the level of power was too high. Junior brother, you've just ended your woo and become an ancestor, so you don't understand the power of the immortal realm. Right now, I'm going to borrow the lives of these old bastards to explain it to you. Amidst the cold laughter, Ling Xuanzi stood still on the spot. Only his right hand suddenly reached out, grabbed, and retracted. Boom! In the sound of an explosion, the black sword Qi was grasped by Ling Xuanzi across the air like a huge dragon, and then it exploded into a rain of black lightning. This old bastard has grasped the immortal law from the 9th grade of heaven rank, and its power is far above the earth rank. This also means that in a head-on battle, ordinary people in the same realm are no match for this old bastard at all. Ling Xuanzi explained to Lin Sun as if he was teaching him homework. At this point, Lin Sun finally understood and remembered some rumors. The immortal path was divided into 3 major realms: same lifespan, nirvana, and transcendent. But no matter which realm the immortals were in, there was a huge difference in strength between them. The core was that the power of the immortal law they grasped was different. The power of the immortal law corresponded to the division of the order power, because the immortal law was originally comprehended from the order power. For example, the immortal law of the 1st grade of heaven rank was comprehended from the order power of the 1st grade of heaven rank. In the same lifespan realm, an immortal who grasped the immortal law of the 1st grade of heaven rank could definitely suppress an opponent who grasped the immortal law of the 9th grade of earth rank. In the eternal world, those who could grasp the immortal law of the 9th grade of heaven rank were undoubtedly the top existences in the same realm. Yun Jiwei, for example, was obviously such a terrifying figure. It was also at this time that Lin Sun finally understood why he felt so helpless when facing that sword. The reason was that the immortal law that the other party grasped on the immortal path was far superior to that of ordinary immortals. After all, Yun Jiwei came from one of the top forces in the 7th heaven, and the order power he grasped was at the 9th grade of heaven rank. How could it be ordinary? After understanding this, Lin Sun's state of mind suddenly became calm. The gap was too big, and there was nothing to be unsatisfied about. The only thing that surprised Lin Sun was that in the face of such an opponent, 4th senior brother was not afraid at all. This completely exceeded his understanding. In the past, he subconsciously thought that 4th senior brother would be in existence on the same level as eldest senior brother and 2nd senior brother. But now it seemed that 4th senior brother was obviously an anomaly among the descendants of Fangtsuan Mountain. Humph! Ling Xuanzi's disrespectful attitude caused Yun Jiwei to frown, and he didn't hesitate to withdraw his immortal Dao weapon. It was a sword that was fiery red as if it was burning, and it was filled with an immortal aura. As soon as it appeared, heaven and earth seemed to be incinerated and drowned by endless flames. However, Ling Xuanzi turned a blind eye to it and said, "This old bastard is at the mid-stage of the longevity realm, and his immortal Dao weapon is extraordinary, but it's only at the earth rank. If I'm not wrong, this old bastard should be a poor bastard who isn't doing well, and he doesn't have the ability to gather first-rate immortal materials. Otherwise, why would he carry an earth-rank immortal Dao weapon and embarrass himself?" The word "poor bastard" was like a knife that stabbed into Yun Jiwei's heart, causing him to be unable to restrain himself any longer, and he slashed with his sword. Boom! Along with this slash, the sky completely collapsed, and the void rumbled and collapsed. Waves of immortal aura were released from the sword, and it simply seemed as if it wanted to destroy this world. Ling Xuanzi withdrew the 3,000 floating sinks, and the snow-white horsetail whisk transformed into a silver waterfall that swept through the void. The fiery sword Qi that covered the sky collapsed and vanished like bubbles. Yun Jiwei's pupils constricted abruptly, and he finally realized that this fellow who claimed to be the fourth successor of Mind Formula was far more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. Although Master's 3,000 floating sinks is seriously damaged, it's still a treasure personally refined by Master. How can it be compared to an embarrassing immortal Tao weapon? Little junior brother, this treasure has been covered in dust in your hands all these years. Ling Xuanzi couldn't help but let out a long sigh in the end. In the distance, Lin Sun had a strange expression in his eyes, and he remained silent. In fact, he was stunned by Ling Xuanzi's unparalleled style. How could an ordinary person compare to him when facing a great enemy, yet he still spoke with confidence and composure in a carefree manner. Roar! With a deafening roar, the handsome green mantis rose into the sky with Li Shangjuan on its back. Holding the purple jade ruler in one hand, he said with a blank expression, "If the Master of Mind Formula is really as powerful as you say, why is he hiding like a turtle and not daring to show his face in the eternal world?" There was a hint of sarcasm in his voice. Ling Xuanzi's face suddenly darkened, and as if he was rarely angered, his eyes burst out with a frightening cold light and killing intent. He said, "For this alone, I can't let you leave alive." Boom! His green robe fluttered, and the 3,000 floating sinks in his palm suddenly swept out. A long river formed by silver divine light enveloped Li Shangjuan. Li Shangjuan struck out with the purple jade ruler, and the sky was suddenly filled with purple mist. The immortal totem of dragons and tigers, Yin and Yang, appeared. This strike was indeed mysterious and unpredictable. The immortal laws and power it used were far beyond Lin Sun's comprehension at the moment. But it was precisely this attack that was instantly blasted into pieces when it went against the 3,000 ups and downs, and it was as weak as a piece of paper. Li Shangjuan was fine under the impact, but the green mantis under him suffered. It was hit by the silver rain of light that filled the sky. Its skin was torn, and its bones were broken. It let out a shrill cry and almost flung Li Shangjuan away. Li Shangjuan flew into the sky in exasperation and put away the green mantis. With a livid face he said, "How dare you hurt my bull? You're asking for death." He activated the purple jade ruler and charged through the sky. His entire body was bathed in the purple rain of immortal light, and he looked like a god who was angry, causing the world to wail. At the same time, Yun Jiwei also attacked. She controlled the brilliant red divine sword and swung out a sword qi that blotted out the sky. It was like a cloud of fire that burned the 9 heavens. "Humph, you're just an ant trying to shake a tree." As he spoke, Ling Xuanzi flashed up while numerous azure-colored eternal Tao flowers that seemed like glass bloomed all over his body, and his imposing aura shot through the world. Along with him, swinging the 3,000 upheavals, boundless silver-colored profound light surged into appearance. Everywhere it passed, the sword qi that seemed like it was burning was crushed into pieces, the brilliant violet rain of light was crushed into powder, and it swept through everything like a hot knife through butter. It was also at this moment that Ling Xuanzi, who'd suppressed himself for countless years and endured the boundless torment of darkness, had completely revealed his might to the world. In the blink of an eye, both sides had fought intensely for a few dozen rounds, and it caused this expanse of the heavens and the earth to collapse completely while everything in the world showed signs of collapse and destruction. Even the central immortal court at the peak of the mountain was affected. It rumbled and shook violently while numerous cracks appeared on its surface, and it seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Obviously, this supreme place that had survived since the last era was bound to fall and be unable to protect it. Bang! Amidst rumbling that shook the heavens and the earth, 2 figures shot out. Shockingly, it was Yun Jiwei and Li Shangjuan. They were shaken to the point their figures staggered back, their clothes were disheveled, and their vital blood roiled. On the other hand, Ling Xuanzi's green clothes fluttered while he held a horsetail whisk in his hand, and he seemed like a supreme god. Yun Jiwei and Li Shangjuan's eyes were filled with seriousness, surprise, and bewilderment. They seemed to have never imagined that, under their joint attack, they would actually be suppressed and pushed back by Ling Xuanzi alone. When did Mount Heart have such a heaven-defying disciple? P.S. I didn't stop updating on the first day of my business trip. Chapter 2655. Lin Sun couldn't help but gape. Fourth senior brother had been suppressed in the core ruins for eons. How could he still be so strong? Didn't they say that the path to immortality was severed after the forbidden power of order covered the ancient path? But soon, Lin Sun realized that there was a deviation in his cognition. Fourth senior brother was suppressed in the primordial era. His cultivation might have reached the immortal level before the forbidden power covered the universe. If that was the case, then fourth senior brother's talent was too monstrous. Junior brother, do you see that? These two old bastards are both in the middle stage of the heavenly longevity realm. In fact, it's almost impossible for them to improve further given their age. Ling Xuanzi spoke leisurely as if he was a god giving orders. He held the 3,000 floating sinks in his hand. When he attacked, he was as graceful as an immortal. But the power he unleashed with every move made Yun Jiwei and Li Shangjuan, the two immortals, almost unable to lift their heads. Boom! The world was turned upside down. The light of the Tao of immortality swept out. The entire world seemed to be collapsing and was about to be destroyed. Kill! Yun Jiwei's expression was gloomy and unsightly while he attacked with his sword in hand. The divine sword that blazed like a ray of fire surged out with boundless rivers of flames, and all of them were formed from the eternal laws, causing them to be peerlessly terrifying. Even sovereign ancestor Juexian's soul would be destroyed if he came into contact with even a hint of it. That was the aura of a 9th-rank heaven-ranked immortal. It was unimaginably powerful. Go! Ling Xuanzi waved his horsetail whisk and chanted. His voice resounded through the 9 heavens. Boom! Amidst the rumbling that shook the heavens and the earth, the bright red divine sword was destroyed, and Yun Jiwei was even shaken to the point of coughing up blood. His figure staggered back, and his face turned ghastly pale. On the other side, Li Shangjuan's purple jade ruler was also wailing. It was suppressed by Ling Xuanzi's divine presence, and couldn't get close. He was just one person, but he was able to suppress 2 immortals. One had to know that both of them were at the peak of the heavenly longevity realm. In the eternal world, people like them who wielded the laws of immortality were called the heaven immortals of the heavenly longevity realm. Those who wielded the laws of immortality were naturally the earth immortals. The power they wielded was far from being able to fight against the heaven immortals. Rumble! Amidst the intense battle, Ling Xuanzi seemed as if he was taking a stroll in the courtyard. He waved his horsetail whisk, and silver light flowed, crushing the sky, causing Yun Jiwei and Li Shangjuan to be injured continuously. Nanfaidu and Gu Lingzhen, who hadn't made a move yet, didn't dare to hesitate when they saw this. They activated their cultivation and charged into the sky. Ha! Nanfaidu shouted loudly as a dark green spear flashed out from the top of his head. Its sharpness was restrained, yet it was suffused with a ferocious aura of slaughter that could terrify even ghosts and gods. Clang! At the same time, the snow-white flying sword shot out from Gu Lingzhen's palm and gently rotated in the void, scattering ripple-like waves of sword qi. Each wave was like a world of swordsmanship, and the layers of the waves spread out like layers of swordsmanship world. Such a scene could be said to be world-shocking. One is still one. So what if there are 2 more? Ling Xuanzi's eyes glowed brilliantly as he stepped through the air like a god patrolling, and his snow-white horsetail whisk transformed into boundless resplendent beams of light that shot out. Bang! The dark green spear buzzed as it was struck by the peerlessly mighty force, and it shook Nanfaidu to the point his blood and qi roiled, causing his expression to change. On the other side, the ripple-like worlds of swordsmanship shattered amidst the explosion and were crushed by the white-silver torrent. Even Gu Lingzhen couldn't help but reveal an expression of disbelief. It should be known that the four of them possessed ninth-grade heaven-rank immortal laws. Even though they were at the heavenly longevity realm, it was absolutely not difficult for them to crush ordinary immortals. However, at this moment, even if they joined forces, they still weren't able to suppress the opponent's arrogance. So how terrifying was his cultivation? Kill! The four of them glanced at each other and didn't hesitate to use their strongest technique. Bang! The might of the immortals blotted out the sky and swept out in all directions. All sorts of miraculous and unbelievable techniques were mixed between the spear, divine sword, jade ruler, and flying sword, causing this expanse of heaven and earth to be thrown into disorder and everything to collapse. Lin Sun's expression changed, and he didn't dare to continue watching the battle. "Senior uncle, let's go out." He helped up Kong Ju, who was drinking wildly, and flashed out of the central immortal court. This place was on the verge of collapse, and they couldn't stay here any longer. Buzz. At the same time, the abyssal sword cauldron floated up and down, sprinkling billions of rays of light that protected him and Kong Ju. But even so, they still felt like they were in a storm. The aftermath of the battle was everywhere, and the aura of the immortals kept rushing over, causing the abyssal sword cauldron to shake violently, putting Lin Sun under great pressure. The fluctuations of the battle could easily destroy a part of the universe and collapse a world. If it wasn't for the abyssal sword cauldron, Lin Sun couldn't help but wonder if he could withstand it with his cultivation. Ling Xuanzi's clear laughter came from the intense battle. "Little junior brother, calm down and experience the power of the immortal realm. It will be greatly beneficial to your future cultivation. Of course, if you can't hold on, you just need to say a word and I'll kill these four old bastards." The faces of Nan Faidu and the others darkened and became even more unsightly. From the beginning, Ling Xuanzi had treated them like trash and recklessly criticized them. As immortals, when had they ever been treated like this? Kill! Their attacks became more and more ferocious. Their divine might was vast and mighty, causing the world to collapse and all things to be destroyed. Although the power of every attack was directed at Ling Xuanzi alone, Lin Sun, who suffered the impact of the aftermath of the battle, was in great pain. The abyssal sword cauldron rumbled and was pushed to the limit by him. But as the aftermath of the battle swept out, it was like huge waves slamming onto Lin Sun's body, causing his blood and qi to churn and his body to sway as if he was drunk. One should know that he was an exalted emperor ancestor. When he was fighting Qi Lingyun and the others, he was invincible and no one dared to claim supremacy. But now, just the aftermath of the battle was almost too much for him to bear. At the end of the day, the disparity in strength was too great. Nan Faidu and the other three immortals were peak existences who wielded the ninth-grade immortal laws of heaven, after all. It was already a miracle that Lin Sun could endure the aftermath of the battle until now. If it was anyone else, their soul would have been destroyed by now. Boom! Suddenly, the heavens and the earth were completely destroyed. The towering mountain collapsed, and the central immortal court that stood towering above it collapsed along with it. The energy of the laws that covered the entire god's ruin exploded and transformed into a boundless torrent of laws that spread out. It was like the world had been turned upside down. Swoosh! At this instant, Ling Xuanzi, who was fighting the four immortals, flashed and arrived by Lin Sun's side. He grabbed Lin Sun's arm and tore space apart before charging into the sky. "Where do you think you're going?" Nan Faidu and the others roared and teleported. They were like four rays of divine light as they chased after Ling Xuanzi. Boom! An earth-shattering tremor resounded in the starry sky. The cultivators who had been waiting outside the god's ruin were shocked to the point that their bodies trembled, and then they looked towards the source of the sound. At this moment, the ruins of the gods that were like the wings of a butterfly actually seemed as if they'd been struck, and they started to collapse. The entire expanse of the starry sky rumbled violently while peerless chaotic flows of energy and meteors shot towards the surroundings, and it seemed like an area of the starry sky had been thrown into complete disorder. "Retreat!" Exclamations resounded, and the cultivators nearby instinctively fled far away. The destructive force was too terrifying, and it wasn't something they could resist. "Look over there!" At the same time, everyone noticed that numerous seemingly eternal and dazzling rays of light had charged out from within the ruins of the gods, and they were like numerous gods that emanated monstrous might as they fought intensely. There was no doubt that the destruction of the gods' ruin was caused by this Tao battle of the immortals. It was terrifying. No one had expected that such a shocking battle would occur before the gods' ruin had truly come to an end. Moreover, they even destroyed the gods' ruin. It's the 4 immortals of the 4 Eastern imperial families. But who's fighting him? Many recognized Nan Faidu, Gu Lingzhen, and the others, but couldn't recognize the silhouette fighting the 4 undying beings, or who it was. But there was no doubt that the other party was very strong. One person was able to stop the attacks of 4 undying beings. That kind of horrifying power shocked everyone. It was unbelievable. "Look, Vicious Lin is here too," a surprised voice rang out. Only then did people notice that in the battlefield, a tall figure was protected by the green-clothed man. The sword cauldron above his head floated up and down. It was Lin Sun. Where did Vicious Lin find such a powerful backer? Many people found it hard to believe. Previously, the scene of Nan Faidu and the other 3 entering the god's ruin was witnessed by everyone. They all knew that Lin Sun was most likely going to be in trouble. But what happened now completely overturned their previous conjecture. Even if they racked their brains, they would never have thought that Lin Sun, who was all alone, had such a great figure at the immortal level protecting him. No wonder he dared to be so arrogant. "It turns out that he has something to rely on," someone whispered. "It's just that Lin Sun didn't just offend the 4 Eastern imperial families. He also offended the immortals of the 8th heaven. Under such circumstances, who would dare to risk universal condemnation to protect Lin Sun? Aren't they afraid of death?" Many people were bewildered. On the battlefield, Ling Xuanzi was fighting fiercely with Nan Faidu and the others. He was confident and composed. The 3,000 floating sinks in his hands erupted with unprecedented power. However, Lin Sun, who was protected by Ling Xuanzi, was very passive. He was like a straw tied to the battlefield, helpless and uncomfortable. The level of power displayed in this battle had completely exceeded his understanding. He didn't dare to release his divine sense to sense it. He could only passively be protected by Ling Xuanzi and constantly resist the impact of the aftermath of the battle. The situation was extremely torturous. In the end, Lin Sun couldn't help but say, "4th senior brother, have you played enough? Do you really think I can't see that you're using this opportunity to beat me up?" Ling Xuanzi, who was fighting fiercely, had a strange look in his eyes. He couldn't help but smile, but he said seriously, "Junior brother, I'm helping you comprehend the mysteries of the immortal level. You can't measure the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure." Chapter 2656. Back in the central immortal court, Lin Sun had noticed that 4th senior brother Ling Xuanzi had the upper hand against the 4 undying figures. Although Lin Sun couldn't understand the power of the immortal realm, he still had his battle experience. How could he not know that if he had tried his best, this battle would have been over already? But the battle did not continue, although Ling Xuanzi said that he wanted to use this battle to give Lin Sun some pointers and let him feel the power of the immortal realm. Lin Sun couldn't help but suspect if his 4th senior brother was also using this opportunity to teach him a lesson. If that was the case, Lin Sun would endure it. After all, he had schemed against Ling Xuanzi once before. But the crux of the matter was that they'd fought their way into the universe now. Without the concealment of the ruins of the gods, everything would be exposed before the eyes of all the cultivators in the surroundings. If some ruthless characters were to appear at this moment, it would only make the situation even more uncontrollable. Ling Xuanzi also seemed to realize that Lin was in a bad mood, so he immediately said with a smile, Well, I'll help you get rid of the enemy now." Then, he glanced at Nan Faidu and the other three with eyes as sharp as lightning. "Everyone, it's time to end this farce. My little junior brother no longer has the patience to listen to my guidance. There's no other way. I, Ling Xuanzi, can only send all of you on your way." His voice was like the morning bell, and it resounded through this expanse of the universe. The spectators in the distance were all astonished. Little junior brother? Vicious Lin actually had a sect behind him? If his senior brother was an immortal realm existence, then his teacher, how strong was he? This news was like a hurricane, wreaking havoc in the hearts of the people, causing an uproar and restlessness. Only Gu Banzwang, Yun Luohong, and the other members of the four Donghuang clans were the calmest, because they already knew that Lin Sun's master was Mount Innerheart. However, even they did not expect that Ling Xuanzi, the successor of Fang Siyuan, who was so terrifying that he could fight against four immortals, would appear at this moment. This was completely beyond their expectations. Boom! Right when everyone was surprised and bewildered, Ling Xuanzi's aura changed abruptly in the distant battlefield. His figure that was originally handsome like a young man actually surged with an extremely great dignified aura. Crash strands of green light condensed and transformed into a 36 peak-ranked green lotus platform. It glowed brilliantly in the universe, and it revealed boundless profound scenes. Ling Xuanzi stood on it with a horsetail whisk in one hand and the Tower of Infinity in the other. He was like a god that stood above the 9 heavens, giving off an unreachable and majestic feeling. At this moment, Nan Faidu and the others, whose eyes were bloodshot from the intense battle, felt a chill run down their spines. Their expressions changed slightly as they realized that something was wrong. Because Ling Xuanzi seemed as if he'd become a completely different person, and the aura he emanated caused them to feel a bone-piercing sense of danger. "I'm afraid he's going to die if he continues to hide." Nan Faidu's face was dark as water. "Then let's use our trump cards and kill this fiend," Yun Yunjiu said. As he spoke, he flicked his sleeve, causing a gorgeous divine ray of light to flash up and transform in midair before transforming into a 5-colored flying knife that glowed brilliantly and flowed with the radiance of the 5 elements. Strands of dazzling order energy gushed out from the tip of the flying dagger. Merely the aura it released caused the starry sky to tremble, and countless cracks appeared in the nearby space. It was a ghastly sight. 5 essence spirit severing saber. The secret treasure was imprinted with the aura of order and contained the essence of the 5 elements. Although it seemed to be the size of a palm, a simple strike from it could tear apart the power of rules that covered an entire world. It was truly terrifying. "Kill!" Yun Jiwei shouted loudly as the 5-colored flying dagger shot out explosively. When looked at from afar, it was like a ray of light that tore apart the universe, and it emanated an all-powerful might. The cultivators in the distance felt a piercing pain in their eyes while their minds were terrified. Even if they were extremely far away, they still felt terror as if a sharp blade was pressed against their throats. However, a scene that made one's scalp numb appeared. The 5-colored flying dagger had just arrived before the 36-rank azure lotus platform when it was obstructed by numerous azure petals that seemed like a rain of light, and it was confined there. No matter how it struggled, it was unable to escape. Ling Xuanzi stretched out his hand and made a grabbing motion, causing the 5-colored flying dagger to fall into his palm. With a light flick of his fingers, this treasure that Yun Jiwei regarded as her trump card collapsed inch by inch, transforming into a rain of light that drifted through the gaps between Ling Xuanzi's fingers. Puff! The destruction of his treasure caused Yun Jiwei to be affected as well, and he suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood while his expression changed drastically, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. "Go!" In the distance, Ling Xuanzi raised his hand, and the Tower of Endless soared into the sky before vanishing into thin air. Before everyone could recover from their shock, a muffled bang resounded as the Tower of Endless actually appeared in the sky above Yunjiwei and crushed down. The ancient tower that seemed as if it was constructed from divine gold emanated a dazzling torrent of the Grand Tao, and it enveloped Yunjiwei's body. It wasn't that Yunjiwei didn't want to dodge, but the nearby space had been sealed like a cage of the Grand Tao, and it was utterly impossible for him to move. His eyes opened wide with rage as he circulated his eternal Tao to the limit, yet he was actually unable to struggle free, and he could only watch helplessly as the Tower of Endless crushed down. Subsequently, a wave of rumbling that shook the heavens resounded as Yun Jiwei's head, neck, chest were crushed and obliterated piece by piece. Only a rain of light that covered the sky remained, and the seemingly eternal Tower of Endless floated there silently. An eternal almighty expert that possessed a 9th-grade heaven-rank laws was crushed with a single strike. The bloody scene caused everyone in the distance to tremble, and they stood there dumbfounded and in disbelief. Even Lin Sun didn't expect the Tower of Endless, a treasure that had accompanied him since he was young, to possess such unbelievable power. So much so that he couldn't help but gasp when he witnessed this scene. This was an absolute suppression in terms of power, and it didn't allow the opponent to escape at all. A single strike had destroyed both his body and soul. On the battlefield, Yun Jiwei's death was a great shock to Nan Faidu and the others. Their expressions changed drastically, and their bodies stiffened. Yun Jiwei's combat strength wasn't any weaker than any of them, yet he was killed just like that. How could they not be shocked? Go! Ling Xuanzi chanted, as if he was the ruler on the 36th grade Green Lotus platform. Boom! The Tower of Endless disappeared into thin air once again. Nan Faidu, Gu Lingzhen, and Li Shangjuan were scared out of their wits. They dodged at the first possible moment and exerted all of their life-saving trump cards at the same time. However, Nan Faidu's dodging figure suddenly froze as if he was grabbed by a giant hand. Then, the Tower of Endless appeared above his head, and millions of dazzling divine radiance poured down like a waterfall. Open! At this critical moment, the 6 divine swords appeared behind Nan Faidu. They clanked and turned into the 6 harmonies sword diagram, surging with the mysterious light of immortality. This was his trump card, called the 6 harmonies void slaughtering sword formation. It was tempered by 6 different order energies and contained a surging aura of immortality. He wouldn't use it unless it was a matter of life and death, but he couldn't care less at the moment. However, Ling Xuanzi showed a hint of disdain when he saw this scene from afar. The Tower of Endless was the natal treasure of his master, the master of the heart core. How could anyone resist its power? Then, boom! As the Tower of Endless pressed down, the 6 harmonies void slaughtering sword formation that had just appeared immediately exploded, as if it was hit by a giant hammer. The 6 divine swords all shattered. Nan Faidu's eyes were filled with despair. Even this could not be stopped? In the next moment, he turned into a mist of blood and was crushed. His body and soul were obliterated by the endless light of Tao, vanishing without a trace. The second immortal cultivator had fallen. In the distance, everyone's limbs turned cold and their minds went blank. Immortal cultivators were like legends to them. They were known as almighty cultivators who lived as long as the heavens and were immortal in the world. It was a level that every martial emperor dreamt of reaching. But now 2 immortal cultivators from the 4 eastern imperial clans had fallen. The bloody and cruel scene was like a bolt of lightning that struck everyone's heart. Let's go! Li Shangjuan was completely terrified. He immediately steered the violet jade boat and tore through the void to escape. The violet jade boat was obviously a secret treasure for escaping. It possessed unimaginable power and could break through the barrier of the world. Condense! Ling Xuanzi waved his horsetail whisk. Silver light filled the sky and turned into a mysterious and obscure Tao path. It covered an area of 100,000 meters, and the totem of a crescent moon and 3 stars appeared within it. In just an instant, Li Shangjuan and the violet jade boat beneath him seemed to have fallen into a swamp. The area was covered by the Tao path in all directions. Just like the Forbidden Zone, he had nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. Ling Xuanzi, aren't you afraid that your Fangtsuan mountain will be destroyed? Li Shangjuan yelled. His face was ashen, and his eyes were filled with rage and terror. Ling Xuanzi did not answer. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion resounded in the distance. Li Shangjuan swiftly turned around, and only now did he notice that Gu Lingzhen, who'd fled towards another direction at the same time he was trapped, had actually followed in the footsteps of Nan Faidu and Yun Jiwei. Her body had been shattered by the pagoda, and her soul dispersed. The third immortal cultivator had fallen just like that. In an instant, Li Shangjuan was stunned. He felt as if the sky had collapsed. Ever since he set foot on the immortal path, this was the first time he had felt such terror, despair, and helplessness. Ling Xuanzi, this isn't your power. Li Shangjuan seemed to have understood. He looked at Ling Xuanzi with anger in his eyes. It's not too late for you to understand. Today, I'm acting on behalf of Master. If I don't kill you, I'll be letting down the 2 treasures left behind by Master. Ling Xuanzi said indifferently. Seeing his actions, Lin Sun wanted to say something. 4th senior brother, you're just a guy who was suppressed by Master. What right do you have to act on behalf of Master? But in the end, he held back. He had no choice. The Tower of Ceaseless and the 3,000 floating and sinking couldn't unleash such power in his hands. He could only let Ling Xuanzi unleash his power. Boom! An earth-shattering roar resounded. The Tower of Ceaseless was activated again. It appeared above Li Shangjuan's head and released a myriad of rays of light. Li Shangjuan sighed, his eyes full of bitterness. It was originally an operation to capture and kill Lin Sun, but in the end, he lost his life. The world was unpredictable. In the next moment, his body was killed. It evaporated in the boundless Taoist light and disappeared completely. At this point, all 4 immortal cultivators had fallen. They were killed cleanly. Everyone was silent. The crowd was shocked. Chapter 2657. In the vast universe, the destructive torrent was still rolling and spreading, but the people in the distance looked as if they had lost their souls and stood there in a daze. 4 immortal realm experts from the top forces of the 7th heaven were smashed to death by that pagoda one after another. It should be known that those who could still stand in this universe and watch the battle were almost all powerful existences in the Emperor realm. However, in the face of such a bloody scene, they could not help but shiver and feel their scalps go numb. It was too terrifying. Fang Xiuen's successor, Ling Xuanzi, stood on the 36 Green Lotus platform, holding a horsetail whisk and holding a pagoda, just like a legendary deity. Who would have thought of this before? In the hearts of everyone, Nan Faidu and the others were supreme overlords that they could look up to. Yet now they'd been killed successively in this cold and silent universe. The impact of this was too great, and anyone who witnessed this scene would probably be shocked to the point their jaws hit the ground and feel terrified. Uncle, I've seen him before. He once attacked in the Tai ruins and beat up evil god Tishi. Xiang Xiaoyuan transmitted her voice, her clear eyes filled with excitement and worship. He is Lin Sun's senior brother. He is simply omnipotent and invincible. Lu Xiangchue could not help but be shocked. A few years ago, I heard that a group of Fang Xiuen's successors arrived in the eternal true world and killed their way to the 6th heaven in just a short 9 days. But I did not expect Fang Xiuen's successor to be so terrifying. Ling Xuanzi's elegant demeanor of killing 4 immortal realm experts in the blink of an eye was too dazzling. Even Lu Xiangchue was shocked and filled with admiration. How could this be? This is impossible. This is impossible. On the side of the 4 eastern imperial clans, Gu Banzwang, Yun Luohong, and the others were in a daze. They suffered a heavy blow and were about to collapse. Even among the immortal emperor clans, the number of immortal realm experts was limited. Yet now, every single clan had lost one of their own. How could they accept this? The universe was in an uproar and fell into great shock. This battle also made everyone remember Ling Xuanzi deeply. No one would forget that there was such a peerless almighty among the successors of Fang Siyuan Mountain. On the battlefield, a green Dao light circulated with an immortal luster. Ling Xuanzi's eyes were filled with longing as he licked his lips. Junior brother, do you think my battle strength can kill undying beings like killing chickens? He said slowly. The battle was over. Lin Sun, who had fallen into a passive position, finally recovered from the painful impact and felt relaxed all over. When he heard Ling Xuanzi's words, he said angrily, "Since it's so easy to kill them, then why did it take so long? Don't tell me it's to let me feel the power of the immortal realm." At his current realm, even if he could sense the power of the immortal realm, it would be like looking at a flower in the mist. He wouldn't be able to comprehend anything. Ling Xuanzi smiled. You can't wrongly accuse a good person. Cut the crap. Let's go. Lin Sun's black eyes glanced around, and he didn't look relaxed. Even though the eternal figures from the 4 eastern imperial clans had been eliminated, who could be sure that there weren't even more terrifying opponents hidden in this vast universe? We can't leave. Ling Xuanzi's smile disappeared. His eyes were deep as he stared into the distance and said softly, "The 4 just now were just appetizers. The main show will come next." His deep voice caused Lin Sun's heart to tremble. He quickly asked via voice transmission, "Can we kill our way into Chaotian City first?" Ling Xuanzi was stunned. He seemed to have guessed what Lin Sun wanted to do and said thoughtfully, "We can give it a try." He waved his sleeve and put away the 36 green lotus seed. He raised his hand and tore the void, wanting to leave with Lin Sun and Kong Ju. At this moment, a streak of purple sword chi flickered, tearing through the endless void as it slashed over at an incomparably fast speed. You really can't hold it in anymore?" Ling Xuanzi raised his brows and waved the 3,000 floating and sinking. With a loud explosion, the purple sword chi collapsed and dissipated. "Why do I need to hold it in against the evil creatures of Mount Heart?" Boom! In this universe, a purple beam of light suddenly appeared and shot towards Zhou Su, illuminating the heavens. Following that, a figure appeared. It was a man wearing an imperial crown and a black robe. When his eyes opened and closed, the scene of the universe collapsing and sinking appeared. It was extremely shocking. Along with his appearance, the monstrous immortal light seemed to cover the heavens and earth, covering the sky, causing the bodies of the people in the distance to stiffen and become unstable. It was like a subject seeing a king, and they couldn't help but feel awe. Qi Tianlin, an immortal of the Qi clan in the 8th heaven. The people in the distance were restless. It was as if they saw a legendary god descending to the world. Everyone revealed a look of disbelief. It was said that in the 8th heaven, Qi Tianlin could also be called a giant, and his might could suppress all realms. At the same time, Ling Xuanzi's pupils also narrowed, and he said via voice transmission, "Junior brother, this old thing has a Nirvana god cultivation base. He's a tough one. When the battle starts later, remember to bring martial uncle. Leave the rest to me." There was a hint of solemnity in his voice. Lin Sun's heart was in turmoil. Previously, Nan Faidu, Gu Lingjun, and the others were all at the first level of the immortal realm, and they were already so powerful. Just how powerful would the Nirvana God stage be? As soon as Qi Tianlin appeared, his eyes first glanced at Ling Xuanzi, and then locked on Lin Sun. His eyes were cold, and he said, "Hand over the daughter of my clan's patriarch, and I'll leave your corpse intact." Obviously, Qi Tianlin came for Qi Lingyun. Lin Sun said expressionlessly, If you choose to retreat, maybe I'll spare that bitch's life. If you insist on going the wrong way, she may be the first one to die." Qi Tianlin's eyes burst out a terrifying divine light, tearing 2 cracks in the void. "Little thing, do you really think you can threaten me by capturing Ling Yun? Then I'll give it a try." As Lin Sun said, a painful groan came from the abyssal sword cauldron above his head. Qi Ling Yun was suppressed at this moment, and her slender body showed signs of cracking. "Ling Yun." Qi Tianlin's face darkened and he was enraged. His immortal aura undulated like an ocean, causing the universe to tumble. Many monarchs coughed up blood from the impact, and they retreated in shock. Even some monarchs weren't feeling well, and they had to retreat. The immortal aura of a nirvana god was too terrifying. "Third uncle, don't worry about me. As long as I kill this bastard, I'll die without regrets." Qi Lingyun's voice came from the abyssal sword cauldron. Lin Sun didn't give her a chance to speak. He operated the abyssal sword cauldron to suppress her again, and he looked at Qi Tianlin. "Are you going to retreat or not?" Qi Tianlin's face darkened. This was the first time in countless years that he was threatened by a junior like this. However, he couldn't act recklessly. In his eyes, Qi Lingyun's life was 1,000 times more important than Lin Sun's. He couldn't afford to lose her. "That's all you've got? Old man, hurry up and move aside. Otherwise, you'll become a sinner of the clan if your patriarch's daughter dies." Ling Xuanzi laughed. "Why would I be threatened by you?" Qi Tianlin's face was cold, and he continued, "I forgot to tell you that a strand of Ling Yun's soul is in the clan. Even if she's killed by you now, the clan has a way to revive her." Ling Xuanzi said, "But if it's just a strand of her soul, even if she's revived, her cultivation, foundation, and talent, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for her to recover to her current state, right?" Death meant death. If the original body was destroyed, even if it was revived with a strand of her soul, the cultivation that she had painstakingly cultivated for countless years couldn't be recovered. She had to cultivate from the beginning. The most terrifying thing was that without the talent and foundation that the original body had, it would be extremely difficult for her to recover to her peak level even if she cultivated from the beginning. Qi Tianlin clearly knew this, and his face became even colder. He suppressed the killing intent in his heart and said, "I'll give you a chance. Let Ling Yun go, and I'll leave immediately." "No, we'll naturally let her go after we enter Chaotian City," said Ling Xuanzi. Qi Tianlin couldn't help but laugh angrily. What a good plan! Everyone knows that Chaotian City is covered by the Haotian order, and no one can act arbitrarily in it. This is the power of order left by the Eternal God clan. Even the immortal giants of the 8th heaven dare not offend it. If Ling Xuanzi and Lin Sun really enter Chaotian City, even if the Eternal True clan intervenes, no one in the world can do anything to them. "Just tell me if you agree or not," Ling Xuanzi said impatiently. "The longer it takes, the more disadvantageous it will be for them." Qi Tianlin only felt his chest was stifled. His beard and hair flared up in anger, just as he was about to say something. A voice that was as sonorous as thunder rang out. "Want to enter Chaotian City?" Wishful thinking. The voice paused between every word, and it shook the heavens and space itself. Even if they were extremely far away, some Emperor Realm figures were shaken to the point they saw stars and almost coughed up blood. Boom! Immediately afterward, an old man with white hair and a youthful face appeared out of thin air. His aura was no weaker than Qi Tianlin's. Zhongli Ju. A mighty figure from the 8th heaven's immortal Zhongli family. Seeing this, many spectators directly retreated. Qi Tianlin alone was already extremely terrifying, and if Zhongli Ju joined the battle, the starry sky would definitely be destroyed. At that time, it would be too late to leave. "With just you?" Ling Xuanzi's eyes were bright, and his words were filled with disdain. Even at this moment, he was still elegant. "Me too." At this moment, a pair of silver wings covered the sky and earth, and a figure of 10,000 feet tall walked out from the depths of the void. He towered into the clouds, stepped on the stars, and carried a pair of silver wings on his back. An immortal aura filled the air, and his pupils were like a pair of golden suns, illuminating the starry sky. From afar, he looked like a giant god from the era of creation, walking out from the depths of time, and his voice shook the surroundings. Chi Kang-hun, a mighty figure from the Chi family of the eighth heaven, known as the immortal demon venerable of the Nirvana realm. In countless years, he had slaughtered countless opponents and caused many bloody storms in the eternal true world. Chapter 26:58. The universe was in turmoil. A terrifying pressure swept across the starry sky like a hurricane. Chi Kang-hun's arrival made him the third Nirvana god from an immortal force. Seeing this scene, the Emperor ancestors who hadn't retreated finally couldn't take it anymore. They turned around and left, not daring to stay any longer. This was too terrifying. Previously, Nan Faidu and the others were like legends, awe-inspiring. Now, with the involvement of the eighth heaven's immortal giants, the situation suddenly became terrifying. Xiang Xiayuan and Lu Xiangchu also left. They were persuaded by Lin Sun to return to Chaotian City. Both of them left with a heavy and bitter mood. It was useless for them to stay. They would only become a burden. Even if they were to intervene in the battle, they might not be able to withstand the aftermath of the battle. Leaving was the most realistic choice. This way, they wouldn't be a burden to Lin Sun and his senior brother, and they wouldn't encounter any danger. However, leaving like this made them feel depressed. Their strength was too weak, there was nothing they could do. I'm afraid it's not enough with just the two of you. In the universe, Ling Xuanzi's expression was indifferent. A strand of translucent horsetail whisk swept out from his palm and entangled Lin Sun and Kong Ju behind him. This way, Lin Sun and Kong Ju would move together with him during the battle and receive his protection. Not enough? What if we are included? Suddenly, a cold and gloomy voice rang out. In the distant void, a bronze war chariot rumbled over. Chaotic energy surged about it, and atop the war chariot stood a middle-aged man. His black hair hung loosely behind him, and his eyes flickered with a silver radiance that pierced one's soul. Mu Jiangshan, a supreme figure of the eighth heaven's immortal giant, the Mu clan. On the other side of the void, the cries of ghosts and gods resounded. The sky shattered silently, and a rain of blood poured down. This was a terrifying phenomenon. A skinny man covered in shadows stepped on a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. His blood-red hair was extremely eye-catching. Dongwang Kong, a giant from the Dongwang clan, an immortal giant. The surging and surging universe suddenly became oppressive, and it was oppressive to the point of being on the verge of collapse. Because the omnipresent Eternal Might filled every inch of space, and such energy was sufficient to make any Emperor Realm expert collapse. At this moment, along with the appearance of Zhongli Ju, Chi Kang-hun, Mu Jiangshan, Dongwang Kong, and Chi Tianlin, there were an entire 5 Eternal Realm experts here. The power released from their bodies completely obscured this part of the starry sky. It was terrifying to an unimaginable degree. As for Ling Xuanzi and Lin Sun, who were trapped in the center, their hearts became heavy. They had already guessed that there would be a shocking change in the situation, but they didn't expect it to happen so quickly. They really think highly of our Fangsuan Mountain. Not bad at all. This is what makes it exciting. Ling Xuanzi suddenly laughed as a wisp of madness flashed in the depths of his eyes. Today, I, Ling Xuanzi, would like to see who can survive until the end. Shameless boasting. Even if the master of the heart core was here, he wouldn't dare to be as arrogant as you. Dongwang Kong stepped on the mountain of corpses and the sea of blood, his cold voice resounding through the universe. These two bastards of the heart core probably don't even know what kind of great mistake their master made in the past to bring about such a great disaster. Even now, his fate is unknown, and he doesn't dare to appear in the eternal true world anymore. Chi Kanghun's voice was like thunder as he flapped his silver wings. They were like clouds that covered the starry sky and stirred up billowing gales. Hearing this, Ling Xuanzi and Lin Sun looked at each other, and a hint of surprise flashed in their eyes. Did their master make a great mistake and bring about a great disaster? In this world, who could say that their master was wrong? There must be something hidden in this that they didn't know. Obviously, this guy from the eighth heaven's undying giant force understood this in his heart. Look at these two bastards of the heart core. They don't even know what kind of disaster their master has encountered, and they still dare to commit murder here. They're simply courting death. Mu Jiangshan sneered, and his voice was filled with contempt. Don't talk nonsense, just kill them. I only want the Tower of Endless End and the 3,000 ups and downs left behind by the master of the heart core. Zhong Lijue was dressed in a golden robe. He had white hair and a youthful face. He looked kind, but his words were cold and domineering. Don't be hasty. Let's discuss how to divide this fortune first. Dong Wang Kong's voice was cold. How about this? I only want the power of the order in this boy's body. Obviously, he had his eyes on Lin Sun's Nirvana order. Humph. Chi Kanghun revealed a look of displeasure. In my opinion, no matter what fortune it is, it's best to use our own methods to prevent people from being dissatisfied. All right. Mu Jiangshan nodded. They came for revenge, and also to seize the fortune in Lin Sun's body. No matter if it was the primordial Tao tree, the Tower of Endless End, the 3,000 ups and downs, or even the Nirvana order that was being nurtured in the abyssal sword cauldron, all of them were sufficient to tempt existences like them. Ling Xuanzi couldn't help but laugh from extreme rage when he saw this scene. The battle hasn't even begun, yet these old bastards are actually treating us like fish on a chopping board and intend to divide it up. That kind of indifferent attitude clearly showed that he didn't put them brothers in his eyes. What's the point of talking so much? Just kill him directly. Mu Jiangshan spoke. He activated the war chariot and executed a great divine ability, causing a surging blood mist to sweep through the starry sky and envelop this place. The battle had begun. Bang! The war chariot smashed over like a huge furnace that burned in the universe, and it burned the stars and melted space. Killing intent surged explosively in Ling Xuanzi's eyes. He waved his horsetail whisk, causing silver beams of divine radiance to slash over like a myriad of strands of sword chi. Amidst the dense and terrifying sounds of collisions, the bronze war chariot glowed while the chaotic chi in its surroundings seethed. However, it was suppressed by the surging silver divine radiance, and was unable to move forward. Humph! Mu Jiangshan's eyes burst forth with divine light. With a clang, he waved a black saber and slashed through the 9 heavens, causing a part of the world to descend. This scene was horrifying. It was just a swing of the saber, but it seemed to have slashed through the 9 heavens, causing a part of the universe to descend and turn into a world to suppress Ling Xuanzi. I'll kill you first, you old thing. Ling Xuanzi let out a long roar, and a 36 lotus appeared under his feet. It covered him and Lin Sun, who were behind him, as he moved across the starry sky and charged forward. In his hand, the 3,000 floating sinks shone brilliantly, and a picture of the slanting moon and 3 stars appeared and swept out. Instantly, the two of them fought fiercely, and terrifying fluctuations shook the universe. At this moment, Lin Sun finally understood how terrifying the Nirvana realm was. Previously, when Ling Xuanzi killed Nan Faidu and the others, he was so casual and domineering. But now, just Mu Jiangshan alone was able to fight against Ling Xuanzi. What are you guys waiting for? Let's finish the battle quickly. Dong Wang Kong's voice was cold. His body glowed, and a terrifying scene of mountains of corpses and seas of blood appeared. His figure was covered in obscure light as he raised his hand to activate a blood sword and slashed at Ling Xuanzi. Clang! Ling Xuanzi resisted with the Tower of Ceaseless, and his opponent's blood sword was sent flying. Under the pincer attack of Dong Wang Kong and Mu Jiangshan, he staggered. And this was just the beginning. Kill! In the void, a golden light flashed. Zhong Lijue, who was wearing a golden robe and had a kind face, raised his hand, and the golden immortal law swept across the sky like a violent sea of lightning, rushing towards Ling Xuanzi. Boom! Qi Kanghun also made a move. A pair of silver wings flapped, and a dazzling light shone. It was like a pair of sky-cutting blades, wrapped in fierce and domineering light. Then, all of them moved. Only Qi Tianlin moved. Purple light shot out from his eyes, and his big sleeves fluttered. He opened his mouth and spat out a jade rui, smashing it towards Ling Xuanzi. At this moment, a murderous aura pierced through the universe, shocking the ancients and dazzling the contemporaries. The 5 immortal cultivators from the 8th heaven joined forces and released their power, causing the starry sky to show signs of tumbling and collapsing. It was too terrifying. When one stood in Skyfall City and looked up, one would be able to see the stars in the universe collapsing into pieces while the universe was torn apart. Terrifying divine radiance swept through like a chaotic torrent, and it was a terrifying scene that seemed like the end of the world. Countless cultivators were horrified and cried out involuntarily with shock. A massacre of this level had almost never happened in the vast 1,000 battle domains in the past. It was too terrifying. At this moment, even someone as powerful as Ling Xuanzi had no choice but to dodge. He didn't want to be surrounded, otherwise he would die here. You can't retreat and you can't escape. Someone laughed. All the powerhouses took action and worked together to seal this starry sky area. Is that so? Ling Xuanzi's eyes flashed with madness. As if he was desperate, he stared at Mu Jiangshan and raised his hand to summon the Tower of Ceaseless. Boom! The Tower of Ceaseless appeared above Mu Jiangshan's head out of thin air, pouring endless Tao light. Mu Jiangshan had already seen the heaven-defying terror of this treasure. How could he sit still and wait for death? His palm suddenly slashed, and the nearby void that was sealed by the Tower of Ceaseless was torn open. He was about to avoid this attack, but unexpectedly, his figure strangely paused at this moment. It was also at this moment that the Tower of Ceaseless smashed down. Puff! Cracks appeared on the bronze chariot, and it was violently shaken away. Mu Jiangshan, who was standing on it, directly exploded, and his Yuan Shun was about to be killed. At this moment of life and death, a terrifying power of order condensed from Mu Jiangshan's Yuan Shun, forcibly resisting the suppression of the Tower of Ceaseless. Boom! Amidst the intense rumbling, Mu Jiangshan's Yuan Shun appeared tens of thousands of meters away. With a wave of squirming, it actually reformed its Tao body and recovered. However, his aged face was ghastly pale and unsightly to the extreme. Moreover, his eyes were suffused with a wisp of surprise, bewilderment, and fear. The power of time! He roared furiously, and his voice echoed in the universe. The other immortal realm cultivators who were attacking also witnessed what happened to Mu Jiangshan. They were originally quite puzzled, thinking that with Mu Jiangshan's cultivation, he wouldn't have almost died from this attack. Now that they heard Mu Jiangshan's roar, they seemed to have suddenly understood, and their expressions changed slightly. The law of time? The way they looked at Ling Xuanzi changed. There was fear, and there was also a hint of well-concealed jealousy. Time. To immortal realm cultivators like them, it was undoubtedly one of the most supreme forbidden Dao. At the same time, Ling Xuanzi was also quite surprised, but he soon realized something and transmitted his voice. Little junior brother, you're amazing. Chapter 2659. Mu Jiangshan's sudden injury made the other immortal beings vigilant, and the killing intent in their hearts burned even brighter. Qi Tianlin, Zhongli Ju, and Qi Kanghun attacked together, all of them releasing peerless killer moves, causing Ling Xuanzi to be besieged once again. Not long after, blood blossomed on Ling Xuanzi's body, and fine cracks appeared on his skin. Dark red blood flowed out. His eyes were surging with cold, killing intent, and his body was covered in dense Tao light, blooming with green glass-like divine radiance. Even though he was besieged, his power became more and more terrifying. This shocked Qi Tianlin and the others. It should be noted that with the ability of the 5 of them, even if they are in the 8th heaven, they can sweep the entire 8th heaven with ease. However, under their attacks, Ling Xuanzi was still able to resist until now. This was already shocking and beyond their expectations. Kill him, today is the best opportunity, Qi Tianlin shouted. There were no weaklings present, and it was impossible for Ling Xuanzi to survive after being besieged by Nirvana God Realm experts. Even if I die, I'll drag you old bastards down with me. Ling Xuanzi sneered, and there was no fear in his eyes. He stepped on the 36 stages green lotus platform and rushed forward like a demon god, killing with all his might. Boom! The heavens shook and the earth quaked. The entire universe was violently roiling, and eternal laws erupted like volcanoes, sweeping out in all directions. Stars shattered, space fell into chaos, and torrents of energy surged out, creating a scene of doomsday that seemed to destroy all things. Looking up from Chaotian City, it was as if a battle of gods was taking place, and it was about to sink the entire universe. Boom! In the intense battle, Dong Wang Kong controlled a blood-colored awl, piercing through the void towards Ling Xuanzi's chest, almost piercing through it. Kill! Ling Xuanzi shouted coldly and smashed the Tower of Ceaseless, shattering the blood-colored awl. Dong Wang Kong's figure was about to dodge, but he was wrapped up by the silver horsetail whisk. Bang! As the horsetail whisk's silk tightened, Dong Wang Kong's body was immediately injured. Blood splattered everywhere. His face was pale and filled with anger. This attack almost took his life. However, during this process, some Undying's attacks also landed on Ling Xuanzi's body. Boom! The 36 Grade 6 Azure Lotus platforms that were protecting Ling Xuanzi were destroyed at this moment, turning into a rain of light that covered the sky. Ling Xuanzi's body suddenly shattered into countless pieces of blood, but before the Undying could rejoice, the countless pieces of blood gathered together, restoring Ling Xuanzi to his original state. That's the unspoiled body. No wonder he dares act so insolently. He actually cultivated this type of secret method. An Undying being's expression became ugly. At the same time, his eyes blazed with brilliance, coveting that mysterious inheritance. The unspoiled body, just like the Battle Saint technique, was seen as one of the 9 supreme inheritances of Mount Heart and Core. It was an unparalleled technique created by the Core Master. Legend has it that when cultivated to the extreme, it can ensure that one will never fall into calamities and be unbreakable. For example, just now, if anyone else was hit by the combined attack of these Undying beings, they would have died on the spot. However, though Ling Xuanzi was injured, it wasn't enough to kill him, and he quickly recovered. Boom! The battle was getting more and more intense. Though Ling Xuanzi was covered in blood, he was still charging through the crowd and didn't fall. Ling Xuanzi, how much longer can you resist? Everyone, don't hide anymore, quickly get rid of him. Someone shouted. Let's see how long you can act today. You won't be able to escape by yourself no matter what. At this moment, the group of Undying beings increased their attacks, using their strongest technique. They could tell that Ling Xuanzi was heavily injured and wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. In fact, if it wasn't for the Tower of Ceaseless and the 3,000 ups and downs, Ling Xuanzi would have collapsed a long time ago. Though his cultivation was heaven-defying, he wasn't strong enough to suppress 5 Nirvana Realm Undying beings. Even so, he was still unbelievably strong. His handsome face was stained with blood and his eyes were filled with crazy killing intent. Little junior brother, use the power related to time later. I'll open a way for you to survive. Bring Uncle Master to Chaotian City. Ling Xuanzi's voice was filled with determination. Lin Sun's heart tightened. The usually arrogant fourth senior brother actually said something like this at this moment. It was obvious that he was going to fight with his life. Just as Lin Sun opened his mouth, Ling Xuanzi interrupted him. Don't be so wishy-washy. Just do as I say. Although I'm not as invincible as eldest senior brother, I'm not a coward. If I let you and Uncle Master die with me, Master and the other senior brothers will definitely look down on me when they find out. But as long as you and Uncle Master are alive, at least it can prove that I, Ling Xuanzi, didn't bring shame to Fangtsuan Mountain. At the end of his words, his whole body seemed to be burning. His aura was violent, as if he was going to go all out. The light of Tao illuminated the universe. Looking at Ling Xuanzi at this moment, Lin Sun only felt a sharp pain in his heart, and an unspeakable guilt surged in him. He suddenly felt that he was too mean and rude to the fourth senior brother before. He regarded him as the scourge of Fangtsuan Mountain and never really respected and accepted him, and the fourth senior brother didn't seem to care about it at all. Lin Sun couldn't help clenching his fists. Hurry up! Hurry up! Ling Xuanzi shouted. Lin Sun gritted his teeth and said, Fourth senior brother, if we're going to die, let's die together. I'm not a coward. Idiot! Ling Xuanzi was so angry that he scolded. But when he noticed the determination in Lin Sun's expression and the trace of guilt in Lin Sun's eyes, he seemed to understand at once and couldn't help but sigh. But at the corner of his mouth, there was a smile from the bottom of his heart. Has this little junior brother, who's always disliked me, finally found his conscience? It feels like it's fine even if I die. Ling Xuanzi's blood-stained face suddenly revealed a brilliant and unrestrained smile. Little junior brother, I'm your senior brother. How could I possibly let you die with me? As he spoke, the vital energy in his body surged, and he suddenly emanated an unprecedentedly terrifying might. His cultivation seemed as if it was on the verge of being completely ignited. This expanse of the heavens and the earth rumbled and exploded into pieces while peerless might swept out, and it caused the pupils of all the immortal realm experts to constrict abruptly. Quickly suppress him! Qi Kanghun shouted explosively while a pair of silver wings blotted out the sky, and he emanated a terrifying, imposing aura. So what if I fight with my life on the line? No one in this world can change the outcome. Qi Tianlin's expression was cold as he withdrew a pottery jar that was covered in strange patterns. Chaotic qi surged from within it, and it seemed as if it carried a universe and emanated a boundless aura. At this moment, the others exerted all their strength as well. They didn't intend to give Ling Xuanzi the chance to fight desperately at all, and they intended to destroy him completely. However, Ling Xuanzi grinned with an emotionless gaze, and he seemed to regard life and death as nothing. He said, I've risked my life with this attack. If I'm still unable to carve out a path of survival, then wouldn't I be letting down Master's title of peerless throughout the ages all those years ago? Amidst his indifferent voice, his entire body seemed as if it was burning while circle after circle of violent torrents of the Grand Tao swept out like a landslide and a tsunami, and it blocked and dispersed all the attacks that came from all directions. This caused the expressions of those immortal realm experts to change slightly, and they didn't hesitate to execute their trump cards. For a time, all sorts of supreme techniques and treasures carried an eternal glow that could dazzle the ages, and they rumbled, seethed, and swept through the vast universe. Little junior brother. Ling Xuanzi held the Tower of Endless in his hand, and his expression was filled with composure and indifference. No matter if you agree or not, it's no longer up to you. Lin Sun suddenly noticed that his entire body was enveloped by a terrifying force, and he was utterly unable to move. He couldn't help but become anxious, and he said angrily, Ling Xuanzi, do you want me to feel guilty for the rest of my life? Ling Xuanzi roared with laughter. If you think of me as a good person, then kill these old bastards in the future and take their heads as a sacrifice to me. Right, remember to prepare some good wine for me. As he spoke, He took a deep breath and was about to take out the tower of endless that he had accumulated throughout his entire life. This attack had absorbed all of his essence, chi, and spirit. Perhaps he would die after this attack, but it was worth it so long as his junior brother Lin Sun and martial uncle Kong Ju could survive. The only regret was, perhaps it was because he was about to vanish from the world just as he was about to make a name for himself after being suppressed for eons? I misjudged you back then. However, at this moment, a sigh resounded, and it was filled with emotion. The voice wasn't loud, but it shook the surroundings. In the sky, strands of sword chi flowed. When the voice resounded, Ling Xuanzi's desperate attack seemed to have been restrained, and he was actually unable to move at all. At the same time, a figure blocked in front of him. You and this kid can watch the show from the side while I'm still conscious. This person's voice was hoarse as if he hadn't spoken for a very long time. But as he finished speaking, every single word he spoke was like a sonorous sword that resounded through the heavens and the earth, and it revealed a domineering and fierce aura that struck directly at the heart. At this moment, Ling Xuanzi, who intended to fight to the death, and Lin Sun, who was anxious and furious, couldn't help but be dumbstruck. Shockingly, the figure that stood before them was his martial uncle Kong Ju. His hair was disheveled, his eyes were drowsy, and he seemed down and out like a beggar on the street. At this moment, he seemed as if he'd become a completely different person. His back was ramrod straight while his entire body was covered in sword chi that surged through the universe. As he stood there casually, he seemed like a supreme exalt of the sword that looked down upon the world and roared proudly into the 9 heavens. Bang! The joint attacks of those Eternal Realm experts were extremely terrifying and formidable. But at this moment, all techniques and treasures hadn't even approached him before they were crushed by the terrifying might emanated by Kong Ju's figure. This caused the expressions of Qi Tianlin, Qi Kanghun, and the others to change. Never had they imagined that this figure that they'd always overlooked, who seemed like a madman, would actually become a completely different person at this instant. To walk on the path of the Grand Tao while hanging on the desolate Devourer gourd, overcoming 18 tribulations while he was alive, and attaining eternal karma after his death. I told you long ago that our martial uncle Kong Ju had always been feigning ignorance. Ling Xuanzi shouted loudly, and seemed to be extremely excited. There's only one person in history and history. Lin Sun was overwhelmed with emotions as well. Never had he imagined that Kong Ju, who'd clearly lost all his cultivation, would actually stand out at this moment when there was something wrong with his mental state. P.S. Goldfish has just returned home from a business trip. She'll continue writing after eating a hot meal. Chapter 2660. It's him. Wasn't his state of mind destroyed a long time ago? How did he recover again? In an instant, Dong Wang Kong recognized him, and his expression became ugly. Kong Ju, the legendary giant on the path of immortals. Even in the 8th heaven, Kong Ju was an extremely resounding name, even causing the top 10 undying forces to be wary of him. However, many years ago, Kong Ju suffered a mental tribulation, causing him to lose control of his Tao heart and become delirious. For the 10 undying giants, such a Kong Ju was no longer a threat. Many years ago, in order to seek the fortune of nirvana, the Dongwang family even used the delirious Kong Ju to entice him to take action personally to snatch the fortune of immortals. Yes, many years ago, he lost all his cultivation base and stayed in Chaotian City like a piece of trash. If it wasn't for the protection of the Haotian order, he would have been killed many times. Zhongli Ju's eyes were cold. For others, they might not know the identity of Kong Ju, but for them, the undying giants from the 8th heaven, how could they not know? When they learned that Kong Ju had lost his cultivation base and was living on the streets of Chaotian City, these undying giants personally went to inspect him. In the end, they all got the same answer, that is, as Kong Ju's state of mind collapsed, his cultivation base was destined to be destroyed and could never be restored. But now Kong-ju actually released such unparalleled might. This unexpected event caught these undying beings off guard, causing them to be extremely shocked and bewildered. Playing tricks? Chi Kang-hun snorted coldly. He's just playing tricks. Since his state of mind collapsed, his cultivation base is destined to be unable to be restored. In my opinion, this old bastard is just playing tricks. He won't be able to hold on for long. He flapped his silver wings, releasing a terrifying aura. He didn't believe that Kong-ju had truly recovered. He directly attacked. A wing rose up, and it was like a heavenly blade that lay across the sky. It carried an eternal glow as it slashed towards Kong-ju. So, you all still remember me? Kong-ju, whose hair was disheveled, had a blank look in his eyes. At this moment, being able to wake up seemed to have reminded him of many things. Seeing the huge silver wing slashing towards him, his figure didn't move. Only a misty sword energy swept out from his body. Chi. This strand of sword chi was extremely light, yet it easily pierced through the silver wings and tore off an expanse of flesh, and it was swift and fierce to an inconceivable extent. Chi Kang-hun cried out loudly from the pain, and he revealed a shocked expression as he stopped attacking at the first possible moment. Everyone present was moved. There wasn't a single person who wasn't shocked. Some people felt horrified because a single strand of sword chi easily destroyed Chi Kang-hun's killer move. Could it be that Kong-ju's cultivation has really recovered? For a brief moment the place fell silent. Although these immortal experts had never fought with Kong-ju before, they had heard of him and knew how terrifying his attainments in the immortal path were. A long time ago, Kong-ju was just a character who had just entered the 8th heaven. Although he was famous, the top 10 giants didn't put him in their eyes. However, later on, because he was fighting for a fortune related to order energy, Kong-ju was surrounded and attacked by many undying beings. He was just one person, yet he fought against all of them. Moreover, under those circumstances, he killed his way in and out, surrounded by so many people, yet he still killed a few undying beings and heavily injured many others. After that battle, it caused an uproar in the 8th heaven. Because it was too terrifying and extraordinary, even the top 10 immortal forces were shocked. In the years that followed, Kong-ju also experienced one dangerous battle after another. Every time he set off a monstrous storm, the 8th heaven was in turmoil and countless powerhouses were terrified. It is no exaggeration to say that at that time, Kong-ju was definitely a freak, a tyrannical existence that everyone was afraid of. His attainments on the path of immortality even made some immortal-level antiques who had lived for countless years shudder in fear. If it weren't for his mental state suddenly suffering a calamity many years ago, causing him to become a madman, the entire 8th heaven would have been plunged into turmoil and bloodshed. But now, this ruthless man, who is feared by many cultivators in the 8th heaven, seems to be showing signs of recovering his former power. How can people not be shocked? Martial uncle, you finally admitted that you made a mistake back then. Ling Xuanzi smiled brightly and was in a good mood. The appearance of Kong-ju swept away all the worries in his heart. In the past, when he was still young, he was evaluated by Kong-ju, who went to Fangsuan Mountain as a guest. This child is born to be rebellious. If he does evil, he will definitely be a great disaster. Ling Xuanzi will never forget this matter. Kong-ju smiled and said, I can see that after being suppressed for so many years, your temperament has been tempered. I naturally look at you in a different light. You still have the mood to talk about the past? I will send you on your way now. At this moment, Dong Wang Kong snorted coldly in the distance. He raised his hand and summoned a big bell. Clang! The large bell was distant, grand, and mysterious. It emitted chaotic chi as it resounded through the sky, and it caused the world to seem as if it was about to collapse. Boundless divine might effused out from the body of the bell and condensed into numerous ancient and mysterious markings of the Tao. They were brilliant like immortal gold, and they were dazzling to the extreme. Eastern Emperor Bel? The other undying beings nearby all revealed strange expressions. They didn't expect that Dong Wang Kong would bring the supreme treasure of his clan with him this time. That's an immortal Tao weapon renowned in the 8th heaven, and it possesses boundless divine might. Everyone, it's already at this point. If we still don't use our trump cards, then these bastards will probably look down on us for being incompetent. Dong Wang Kong's expression was cold as he spoke indifferently. That's how it should be. As he spoke, Qi Kanghun opened his mouth, and a palm leaf fan that flowed with auspicious light appeared. When the fan floated in the air, 4 types of divine radiance, wind, lightning, earth, and fire, surged out, and it was extremely terrifying. 4 spirit palm leaf fan. It was also an incredible immortal Tao weapon. At the same time, Mu Jiangshan, Zhongli Ju, and Qi Tianlin respectively summoned their respective treasures. They were a divine whip, a pair of bronze maces, and a 9-colored divine stone respectively. Kill! Dong Wang Kong attacked at the first possible moment. The Eastern Emperor Bell shook, and it descended towards Kong Ju with extreme speed. Auspicious energy surged while divine light surged, and the deep sound of the bell seemed to split the heavens and the earth apart. It shook the universe and crushed space, and it was an extremely shocking scene. However, a divine whip was even faster than this strike. It was like a divine chain of order that covered the heavens and the earth, and it carried a blazing light as it whipped down fiercely. Soulfall whip. According to rumor, even an eternal figure would be dispirited by the whip of this treasure, and it was an extremely overbearing treasure for the soul. Kong Ju's gaze was like a bolt of lightning as he stood on the spot without moving. However, 33 levels of worlds surged out from his body. There were numerous ancient kingdoms floating within them, a myriad of living beings praying and worshipping them, and there were even various gods and Buddhas bowing their heads as they chanted scriptures. A supreme aura of eternal swept out from Kong Ju's body, and he was like the ruler of the 30 heavens that stood towering above the world. Bang! He stretched out his hand and flicked, and he blasted the soulfall whip that struck down towards him flying. At the same time, he gestured with his hand, causing a world of the heavens to condense into a strand of sword chi that appeared in his hand, and then he lightly swept it. Clang! Dong Wang Kong let out a muffled groan as he staggered back. Even the Eastern Emperor Bell he utilized was blasted flying by the terrifying sword chi, and its wail resounded through the universe. Woo woo woo! A strange gale whistled over, and it surged with the profundities of the eternal laws of wind, lightning, earth, and fire. This was Qi Kanghun's attack. He waved the quad-soul banana fan lightly, and then this expanse of the heavens and the earth was covered in boundless and terrifying gale that raged towards the surroundings. Swish! Kong Ju still stood on the spot without moving, and he flicked his sleeve. Numerous strands of sword chi shot out explosively like numerous divine rays of order, and they shattered the gale that covered the sky while the eternal laws of wind, lightning, earth, and fire collapsed and transformed into a rain of light that scattered down. Qi Kanghun's figure was shocking. He utilized the quad-soul banana fan while unfolding his silver wings that blotted out the sky to strike the sword chi that shot over explosively. Pooh! Pooh! In the end, in an instant, the pair of silver wings on Qi Kanghun's back that seemed like clouds that covered the sky were actually slashed off by the sword chi, and blood sprayed through the surroundings. This scene shocked everyone. Ling Xuanzi and Lin Sun glanced at each other, and they couldn't help but gasp. In the blink of an eye, martial Uncle Kong Ju had successively destroyed the killer moves of numerous Eternal Realm experts by himself, and he revealed the supreme elegance of this realm with ease. This was Kong Ju. He revealed peerless might as soon as he regained consciousness. Even though his clothes were still ragged, his hair was still disheveled as he stood there. He seemed like an exalted overlord that pressed down upon the universe. Strands of immortal energy effused out while 33 levels surged into appearance by his side. Every single level was a world that contained numerous ancient kingdoms. Moreover, there were countless living beings there, and they were prostrating themselves in worship towards him while chanting scriptures. Such a scene was truly sufficient to shock the ages, and it was an unimaginably strange and grand scene. On the other side, Chi Kanghun stopped moving. His pair of wings had been severed, causing him to be injured, and he seemed to be in an extremely sorry state. At this moment, his expression was extremely unsightly. Dong Wang Kong, Mu Jiangshan, and the others had livid expressions while their gazes were heavy. At this moment, Kong Ju seemed to be as terrifying as the rumors said, and it caused them to feel that he was extremely difficult to deal with. "I can't wait any longer," Kong Ju muttered to himself while a trace of pain that he couldn't restrain flashed abruptly in his eyes. After that, he took a step forward and swung his fist. Bang! The 33 levels of the ancient world floated up and down while transforming into all things, and a river of stars surged. Kong Ju's punch was world-shattering, and the sound of ancient scriptures actually resounded as soon as it was executed. This was bound to be a peerless strike. Blood and chi shot through the sun and moon, and the heavens and the earth seemed as if they were being reincarnated and fell into a terrifying scene. Pooh! Fresh blood sprayed. Mu Jiangshan was the first to bear the brunt of this attack. He'd originally intended to dodge this punch, yet he'd never expected that the vital energy around his body had been completely locked onto, causing him to be unable to dodge at all. So he could only go head-on against it. Even if he exhausted all his strength, he was still unable to resist the might of this punch, and his body was directly blasted apart. Its might was like a supreme exalted figure swinging his fist forward with indomitable will, and it carried the belief that he was invincible as he swung his strongest attack. Everyone was stunned. Merely a single punch had blasted apart the body of Mu Jiangshan, who was at the rebirth god realm. How domineering was this? Peerless and shocking. It was sufficient to shock the entire world. Mu Jiangshan, who'd only managed to escape calamity with his soul core, let out a loud cry, and he revealed a terrified expression as if he'd been deeply provoked. The hearts of the other Eternal Realm experts went cold as well. How are we supposed to continue?"